Chapter 192. How long has it been since the system was active? This was a question worth pondering over for Luoya. Why did Luoya always tease him that his system was a French system? Not only because the system gave off a sense of surrender, but it was also because of the laziness of a French aristocrat. That's right, as a passive system, it would only react when something obvious happened in Luoya's life. The last time it appeared was when Luoya returned from the holy capital 200 years ago. After that, the young man's life fell into a peaceful state. Every day he would stay at home to study and build infrastructure. Luoya's system didn't have any activity after that. After returning from the sea, Luoya thought that there would be an event waiting for him. However, the system stood him up. From then on, he suspected that it was because of the loan problem. Until today, his guess was confirmed. Ding! Loan repayment complete detected. Event system restarted. 10%, 20%, 30%. Activation complete. Opening new event. Debt crisis memorial event. Courage and wisdom are the keys to overcoming difficulties. However, wealth can also save lives. After overcoming the waves of the financial crisis, your future will be a peaceful harbor. Hehe, not bad. You won't release the falcon until you see the hare. In other words, the reason there was no event before was because I owed money? The system will be closed if you can't repay the loan. In order to help the host get rid of the temptation from various aspects and successfully repay the loan, the event page will be temporarily closed during the loan period. I hope the host can understand. Facing the system's rare lengthy explanation, Luoya fell into silence after pondering for a while. Indeed, when the system opened the event, the discount was too big. For Luoya, who liked to buy toilet paper at a discount in his previous life, the charm of the system was not ordinary. If he couldn't resist buying something else and couldn't pay back the money, causing the system to disappear, then he wouldn't even have a place to cry. Okay, anyway, it was meaningless to open it at that time. But it's different now. Luoya muttered to himself as he put down the teacup in his hand. He looked at the bright sunshine outside the window and stretched himself. It had been an hour since Xia Luo's golden gift mountain in the morning. The brown-haired girl did not dare to delay any longer after checking Luoya's condition. After Xia Luo's observation, the curse power in the small golden bottle placed beside Luoya last night was almost exhausted. It proved that this simple curse vessel was activated at least once at night. In fact, because of rushing through the night, Xia Luo did not sleep last night and left Luoya for about 3 hours. There was an outbreak every 3 hours. This frequency made Xia Luo's face gloomy when the young man was not looking. After thinking about it again and again, she could only postpone the desire to take Luoya to relax. She focused on his condition and immediately began to produce more golden souls. During the time when Xia Luo left Luoya, the young man did not stay idle. After washing up and burning incense, he drank morning tea with the help of the servants and directed a cart of gold coins to be placed in front of the open balcony. When the golden sunlight shone into the room in the morning, the scene of birds falling from the glittering golden mountain and playing back and forth was deeply imprinted in Luoya's mind. It was an illusion of his previous life's wish coming true. It was a kind of satisfaction of financial freedom, elegant, leisurely overlooking the world. In this comfortable and peaceful morning, Master Luo's narcissism continued like this, until these birds began to fly away with the gold coins in their mouths. When he saw the battle pigeons in Sophia's 100-bird garden taking away 2 gold coins, Luoya's face went blank. After that, he no longer had the mood to leisurely enjoy the scenery. What's going on? I was robbed by the birds? Forget about the people. Even Sophia's birds dared to rob me? Luoya, who was inexplicably beaten up, was filled with anger. The chirping of the birds immediately attracted the attention of the nearby servants. In a moment, the butlers, servants, and guards rushed to disperse the flock of birds and fought with the battle pigeons. The entire battle lasted for less than 10 minutes. After that, several people immediately apologized to Luoya, who lost his property and promised to recover it. Forget it, it's just a few gold coins. If you don't want it, then don't. Looking at the anxious face of the butler with sweat on his forehead, Luoya thought for a moment, and decided to shake his head and forget about this matter. Some birds like to collect things that glowed. This was their nature and not the responsibility of the servants. In the end, it was Luoya's fault for letting the gold coins bask in the sun. The young master of the Akot family didn't pursue this matter. This matter made the few people in charge let out a sigh of relief. At the same time, they couldn't help but raise their evaluation of Luoya. Just like the servant organization in the Akot mansion, Sorofia's 100-bird garden also had its own organization to a certain extent. They were the team that took care of Xia Luot for many years. Since Xia Luot was young, they had accompanied this child who lacked the love of parents all the way until she grew up. Regarding the fiancé that their miss suddenly brought back home, these people were also full of curiosity and concern. Without a doubt, through this small matter, Luoya left a very good impression on the servants of the 100-bird garden. The identity of the young master of the Akot family: handsome appearance, gentle temperament, and tolerant attitude. With such a combination of skills, even the servants of the Sorofia family, who were used to seeing young talents, gave a unanimous praise. The only flaw was that this young master Luoya's body seemed to be a bit weak. Chapter 193. What does a staff with the original price of 1 million gold coins look like? Even after the discount, it's still worth 300,000 gold coins. There weren't many people in Xia who could answer this question. But today, Luoya was lucky enough to express his opinion. The black-haired boy sat on a chair at the end of the balcony, looking at the black wooden staff in his hand in a daze. In front of him, the gold coins that were once piled up together had once again disappeared without a trace. 300,000 gold coins, in today's Xia, was definitely a huge sum of money, even for the wealthy Luoya. But now, this money was condensed on this 1-meter-long staff. To be honest, Luoya felt that it was quite magical, but what made him even more confused was the shape of this thing. Thanks for the invitation, it's quite ugly, it's related to benefits, it's hidden. This was probably Luoya's evaluation of the appearance of the Hydra staff. Or at least visually, this fierce weapon didn't surprise Luoya, and there was nothing special about it. It was just a black staff, and it even looked a bit like a random fireplace in the suburbs of a villager's house. Although there was a saying in Luoya's previous life that these spiritual things would hide their own magical powers, it was normal for them to be inconspicuous, but now Luoya was in Xia, and there was no such rule among the humans in Xia. They had always been as ostentatious as possible. A staff in this era was mostly seen as an ornament, similar to the earrings and necklaces of ladies. However, if one traced its origin, it was actually an ancient scepter, a symbol of power, status, and strength. It wasn't something that could be held by just anyone, especially a staff made of precious materials. It could even represent royal power. Therefore, as an ancient weapon, the Hydra staff's origin must be noble. And it might even be a national treasure of a country. There was no reason for it to be made into a shiny fireplace stick, unless the ruined referred to being thrown away. Then Luoya had nothing to say. No, this is a little too ugly, isn't it? What exactly is this? Wait. Normally, extraordinary equipment would more or less have some curse power, even if it wasn't activated, but this Hydra staff didn't have any. In other words, it was extremely hidden and could be disguised as an ordinary item, and it could be worn in various important occasions without being stopped. In Xia, wizards couldn't bring their staffs into banquets under normal circumstances, just like knights couldn't bring their swords. But this Hydra staff looked like a staff, and it was classified as an ornament, so it could be said to jump out of the scope of protection. Luoya was very satisfied with this, and after observing the appearance, Luoya began to have new ideas. This Hydra staff might be a treasure that required curse power to activate, so he would have to use it in practice. After making up his mind, Luoya, who was full of expectations, left. While Xia Luot hadn't come back yet, he asked the servants to take him to the forest in the bird garden. The Sorofia family's courtyard, which covered a large area, showed its advantages at this time. At least, as a testing ground for equipment, there was probably no place more secretive and suitable than here in Rosetta City. After some preparations, Luoya looked at the servants who left under his orders and felt relieved. He took out the dark staff and tapped it on the ground. He closed his eyes slightly, and the curse power in his body flowed into the staff. The next moment a strange feeling appeared, and it also made the boy completely excited. The staff was absorbing his curse power, and it wasn't an ordinary absorption. It was like an unconscious egg hatching. Holding the staff in his hand, Luoya could feel his curse power gradually filling up. And with the nourishment of this curse power, the inconspicuous staff began to gradually change. In the tremor, layers of dark material peeled off from the staff, and a sparkling light began to shine, illuminating the surroundings. This is... The black-haired boy opened his eyes wide and carefully looked at the completely changed appearance of the staff in his hand, and found that there was a painting on it. It was a portrait with golden lines on a black background, and it had the ancient aura of the rock wall murals of the ancient Stone Age. The lines on the picture were quite simple, and it depicted a somewhat abstract monster. It was the Hydra from which the staff came. The crisscrossing body and the crisscrossing snake heads had a special beauty under the simple depiction. And with the change of appearance, the material of the staff also changed one by one. The originally hard body of the staff turned into a jade-like texture under the light, and the shell at the handle shattered, revealing a snake-eye gem. The imperceptible dark golden lines were inlaid on the staff like a river, and if one looked carefully, it seemed that there was dark golden blood flowing in it. It was ancient and majestic, deep and imposing, but it also revealed a dangerous aura that was hard to detect. The black-haired boy looked at the staff that had been reborn under his spell in a short period of time, and could not hide his shock. He then immediately looked at the system. Hydra staff incomplete. Activated. Poisonous Beast King. The poison of the ancient terrifying monster still remains in its corpse. Use the curse power to extract it. The dosage and strength of the poison change according to the amount of curse power. Rebirth body. Use the curse power to stimulate the regeneration ability in the corpse of the Hydra, so that the body of the ancient monster reappears in the world. The strength changes according to the amount of curse power. Looking at the equipment skills that suddenly appeared in the system, Luoya's mood was better. It turned out that you get what you pay for. The system didn't waste the 300,000 gold coins he spent. The Hydra staff was indeed a powerful curse vessel. After understanding this, the boy couldn't help but be eager to try it. Now Luoya was in the bird's garden of Serophia's family. The first skill, Poisonous Beast King, was the skill to control poison. It obviously needed to be tested on live subjects. It was easy to find test subjects here. There were hundreds of birds, and they were all monsters. However, after thinking about it, Luoya dismissed the idea. After all, this was Xia Luo's home. Although these birds were free-range, they were still pets to some extent. It was impolite to kill them casually. Moreover, the birds in the bird's garden accompanied Xia Luo in her lonely childhood when she was young. When he thought of this, Luoya's heart softened. Forget it, I'll spare your lives. Luoya looked at all kinds of birds on the nearby branches, shook his head, and began to focus on the second skill. Without affecting his body, Luoya slowly began to inject the curse power. At the same time, the end of the staff began to tremble and squirm, changing and extending. Just when Luoya felt that the staff was about to turn into a hydra, a familiar call suddenly sounded in his ears. "Little guy, what are you doing?" It was the voice of Paitila. Chapter 194. In the forest, a young man holding a jade cane with black and gold patterns stood on the grass, surrounded by a flock of birds. The sunlight from the sky penetrated the shade of the trees and shone on his body, adding a bit of warmth to the young man's already gentle temperament. The external environment was very quiet and comfortable, and the handsome young man standing there was also very eye-catching and vivid. However, at this time, Luoya's heart was completely different from his appearance. He was in a state of shock. "Paitila? Is that you?" "Of course it's me. Long time no see. Little guy, how have you been recently? This shouldn't be considered good." Listening to Paitila's somewhat smiling voice, Luoya helplessly glanced at his current body. It had been more than a week since he left the historical fragment, but Luoya's situation did not improve much. Although Luoya did not say this, he was still a little anxious. However, the focus now was obviously not in this regard. Paytila, why did you come out? Is something the matter? Yes, I felt a somewhat familiar aura, so I came out to take a look. I didn't expect to see this kind of thing. Her Majesty Queen's voice was somewhat nostalgic and emotional. Luoya could feel that she was checking the cane in his hand. Seeing this, the young man's heart moved, and he asked about the origin of the world snake queen and the Hydra. Strictly speaking, it can be considered my descendant. After all the snakes in this world can be considered my descendant. However, unlike us holy beasts, this kind of monster doesn't have any source substance. Although it's powerful, it doesn't have a specific spiritual will. It can only follow the instincts of a living creature. I killed it. Luoya could not help but ask about Paytila's last words. After that, the young man heard an ancient story from Her Majesty Queen. It was a conflict between factions within the holy beasts. It was the first group of indigenous peoples dispute over source after Shia created the world. An ancient existence like Paytila was inevitably involved and became the representative of the source faction. In contrast, the non-source faction returned to the nature of animals and pursued strength and wildness. One of the representatives of snake creatures was the Hydra. In Roha's previous life, no matter what field, the issue of the path was a very serious topic. But in this world, there were fierce contradictions and irreconcilable conflicts between the Shinno In the end, all source of source was Shia. Just like how the ancient gods of the source would affect the creatures downstream. In ancient times, as long as a source was used, Shia could not be avoided. However, unlike the evil gods, Shia, as the primordial goddess, not only did she not control these children who came later, but she also blessed them. She gave wisdom to the foolish so that they could understand the world, and she gave strength to the weak so that they could gallop across the land. Shia used the source to help millions of creatures. She was a kind mother, so she was respectfully called the primordial goddess. After listening to Paytila's words, Luoya could not help but nod. Indeed, there was no lack of wise people in any era. There must be a reason why Shia was recognized and respected by all the races. And the biggest reason was that she had benefits. To put it bluntly, no one here was an idiot. In the ancient times before civilization developed, the various species were all very pragmatic. It would be impossible to achieve anything by just talking without any tangible benefits. Even the giants, who obviously didn't put any points into intelligence, weren't that easy to fool. For example, Gulandair usually looked dull and honest, but in fact it was because he was not good with words. If you really tried to trick him, this big guy would definitely use his hardest fist to teach you the wisdom of the giants. He would slap your face flat. In the beginning, the conflict among the holy beasts was because some of the monsters did not want to play according to the rules set by Shia. In the process of evolution, their bestial nature gradually got out of control. The chaotic magic elements without source control made them even more irritable, like electrical appliances leaking everywhere. In the end, war broke out. As the mother goddess and the king of the holy beasts, Paytila personally participated in the battle with the Hydra and succeeded in killing it. The war at that time was very tragic. It's not a good memory for me. Sorry, I don't know this. After listening to Queen's story, the black-haired young man looked at the cane in his hand uncomfortably. He thought about it and asked tentatively, Paytila, this cane is made from its corpse. You won't be angry, right? Huh? Hee little guy, you think too much. Dead is dead. It doesn't make sense to be entangled with the corpse. Don't you humans often use the bones of the same kind to make curse vessels? Ugh, this. Luoya listened to Queen's answer and was dumbfounded for a while. In fact, in the current human world, it was already illegal to use the same kind of body to make curse vessels. Anyone who dared to enter the city with a human skull would definitely be stopped for questioning. With the development of the times, more and more new curse vessel materials were discovered and applied. Human bones, which were not a high-quality material, were no longer necessary. However, Luoya did not intend to explain to Paytila. As long as Queen did not pursue him for playing with snakes, everything else was fine. What he did not expect was that there was an unexpected gain in this matter. But I have to say, with this equipment, it will be much more convenient for me to help you. AI. My body is too big. If you want to use curse power to construct my body in the modern world, then your strength would have to be at least origin grade 3 or above. But now that I have this, the situation is different. Paytila said so happily. Then a dim yellow light suddenly appeared on the black-haired young man. Luoya only felt the familiar curse power warming his body. At the next moment, the end of the hydra cane suddenly turned into a golden snake. It was a beautiful golden snake with a unique appearance and the texture of gemstones in the vein. It was not big. It was too small compared to Paytila's mountain-like body in Luoya's mind. However, Luoya could feel that the curse power of this golden snake was the same as the python in the mortal world. The mystery and majesty in its eyes were not reduced at all. The black-haired young man looked at the golden snake looking up at him in front of him, stunned. At the same time, the system prompts began to sound continuously. Chapter 195. 3 days later, in the main hall of the 100 Birds Hall, a black-haired youth was having afternoon tea with Charlotte surrounded by golden light. The rich fragrance emitted from the teacup made people feel relaxed and happy. However, above the slightly rising steam, the owner of the teacup didn't have a very good expression. Luoya took a sip of tea and recalled the situation of the past 3 days. On the day he exchanged for the Hydra staff, Luoya and Paytila had a long chat. The ancient Earth Mother had asked about Luoya and Xiaoluot and recommended her blessings. The Earth Mother was a god who controlled the earth and controlled the harvest in ancient times. At the same time, she also represented fertility and reproduction. She was the representative of the female gods. Therefore, in Paytila's view, reproduction was one of the most important things and needed to be strongly supported, especially in the case of Luoya. There was only one left in the family? How could that be? No, she had to give birth. She had to give birth. Not only that, she had to give birth more. After listening to Paytila's blessing for reproduction, Luoya felt that in scientific terms, it was to promote ovulation in women, and then give men strong reproductive abilities. With one complete receptor and one strong attack, pregnancy was only natural. Moreover, there was more than one. This blessing will have different effects depending on the race, bloodline, talent, and strength of the blessed person. According to Paytila's explanation, if this blessing for reproduction was applied to an old sow, it would probably be a domineering pig mother who could give birth to 10 treasures in one go. However, if it was applied to a human, it was naturally impossible. After all, the biological structure determined that it was impossible to give birth to so many children. Moreover, the more advanced the bloodline and talent, the more concentrated the blessing would be. Based on the bloodline of you and that little girl, twins should be the limit. Miss Paytila analyzed seriously and began to plan the postnatal arrangements for Luoya. The black-haired young man's eyebrows twitched, and he hurriedly asked this great aunt to stop talking. Please, how old is Xiaoluot? Why would she want to bear my child? Luoya's face turned red as she complained. Paytila, who was preparing to show his skills after so many years, was quite confused. Was that not the case? When you two are together, the smell of estrus is very strong. Isn't mating very normal? Her Excellency Queen walked in circles on the ground in confusion. Soon she came to a realization. Then she looked at Luoya with a gentle expression in her eyes. Child, it's all right. My blessings are specially for males. You don't have to feel inferior. You can do it. Wait, what should I say? Who says I can't do it? I could have done it. I can do it very well. After listening to the 2 sentences, Luoya, who felt that something was wrong, blushed and hurriedly denied it. Under the comforting gaze of the World Snake Queen, he wished that he could take off his pants on the spot to prove his innocence. After that, Paytila was like a mother urging him to get married, repeatedly emphasizing the necessity of reproduction to him, and carried out a series of criminal instigation. Didn't you sleep together at night? If you bring it up, she probably won't refuse. We did it to reduce the side effects. Believe me, When mating, the contact area is larger and deeper, the effect will be better. What you said is so reasonable that I can't refute it. After ancient god Yellowstorm once again used the correct theory to hammer the innocent youth's nerves of shame, Xia Luo sent a timely message. When Luoya saw this, he hurriedly rushed back to the manor to prepare for treatment, and also ended his meeting with Pei Tila. However, at that time, he didn't expect that the results of this consultation and treatment were not satisfactory. Over the past 3 days, Luoya met many high-level extraordinaries under the lead of Xia Luot. Among them, there were a few well-known conjurers. Among them, the most knowledgeable one was the itinerant scholar, Andrew Mara. Andrew Mara, source level 2, was already more than 100 years old this year. He was born in an ordinary family in the country of scholars. When he was young, there was nothing special about him. His grades in the academy were average. His original life trajectory should have been an ordinary civil servant in the country of scholars, but Andrew had some different interests and hobbies. He liked to travel. After going to school, Andrew didn't stay at home like other scholars. Instead, he began to travel to various countries to increase his knowledge. Since 100 years ago, he had been patrolling the periphery of the human world and excavating ruins. He had joined many famous adventurer groups and had constantly accumulated knowledge, and gradually stood out. After returning to the academy, he had been invited by many teachers, but in the end, he chose to follow the leader of the adventurer group, Bruce, back to Rose. Andrew was a late bloomer. Roha wasn't surprised by this. As the saying goes, read 10,000 books and walk 10,000 miles. Andrew can be said to be the standard practitioner of this sentence. Those geniuses who stayed in the laboratory all day may have done the first one, but they didn't put it into practice. In the end, they didn't do anything. As a practitioner who relied on his life to obtain his talent and bloodline to fight for it, Luoya could be said to be on the same path as Andrew. He felt very close to this old man. As Bruce's aide, Andrew had watched Xia Luo grow up. The relationship between the two was like that of a grandfather and a grandson. Because of this, Andrew also had a good impression of Luoya. A good doctor-patient relationship was an advantage, but unfortunately, this advantage didn't translate into health this time. Child, there's something wrong with your situation. When the old man with a white beard spent 3 days studying Luoya inside out and said this conclusion, which seemed to be the subtext of, "You are hopeless," Luoya was a little dumbfounded. At the same time, Xia Luo was anxious. However, before the two of them could ask, Andrew had already explained. According to Andrew, Luoya's problem of life exhaustion was actually an ancient disease. Chapter 196. Good evening, Miss Yaloot. It's been a while since we last met at Akot Mansion. Did your deal with your brother go well? Miss Ai Lizzie, it's been a while. You look great. It seems that even without Luoya's company, you can still sleep well. In a lavishly decorated banquet hall, a red-haired girl in a rose-colored dress and a silver-haired girl in a white dress were looking at each other with a friendly smile on their faces. They greeted each other warmly. Around them, amidst the clear but not frivolous music, men and women in luxurious clothes toasted each other while guests danced on the dance floor. It was a scene of joy and harmony. Today was a memorable day for Ruche. 100 years ago, the Austin Empire signed an armistice agreement with the Ruche Mercantile United Nations under the watch of the representative of the theocracy, Akot, officially recognizing Ruche as a country of equal diplomatic status. Without a doubt, this was a landmark victory recorded in the annals of history. It was the result of a century-long struggle by the people of Ruche. This day was known as Liberation Day. It was the biggest commemorative day in Ruche other than the National Day, when the country was founded. On this festive day, the sudden visit of a distinguished guest made the people of Ruche celebrate. Lord Kadia of the Theocracy of Saint Maester, Akot, came to visit with his son to celebrate the festival with Ruche. He also brought along a group of retired military officers, all of whom were centenarians who had participated in the founding of Ruche. They were loyal allies who had fought in wars and shed blood. When the news came out, it could be said that the whole of Ruche was shaken. Since noon when they entered the city gate was filled with crowds of people. The people wanted to see what their neighbor, who had contributed greatly to the founding of Ruche, but had kept a low profile for 100 years, looked like. It couldn't be helped. The Aucott family was too mysterious. Before Luoya came, the Aucott family and Ruche had no connection except for the land. The 1,000-year-old aristocratic family and transcendent family were like a golden signboard that constantly attracted the attention of others. However, the Aucott family had always kept a low profile, so the onlookers were only here to watch the show. What they did not expect was that they would really see something this time. She was a girl as beautiful as the silver moon hanging in the sky on a full moon night. Her silver hair was soft and delicate as if it was glowing. Her skin was flawless like a work of art. Even the most expensive Zella redstone could not compare to her eyes. The moment she appeared in front of people, the sun in the sky seemed to lose its color, leaving only silence and thrill in people's hearts. Of course, this only applied to the commoners and the young nobles who fell in love at first sight. As for the others, they paid attention to different things. The politicians paid attention to whether the sudden visit of the Aucott family represented a new step forward in the relationship with the theocracy. The military paid more attention to the festival itself, and the old army Kadia brought along. Bruce, who knew what was going on, paid attention to the thoughts of the other party's patriarch, Kadia, while Xia Luo naturally competed with Ai Lizi. The red-haired girl looked at the harmonious atmosphere and couldn't help but sigh slightly. She had to admit that the Aucott family's visit on Liberation Day was very smart. If it was any other time, with such a large-scale visit, the first problem would be that it would be difficult to hide. After all, the fact that Luoya was taken away couldn't be made public. The second problem was that no matter how good the relationship between the two families was, it was easy to cause a backlash. But now was the day of liberation, a day protected by history. The Aucott family's large-scale visit was both unexpected and within reason. And on this day, the Aucott family brought along a veteran army that had shed their blood for this land. This meant that the Aucott family was in an invincible position. After this, no matter how forceful the Aucott family was, or if they wanted to negotiate a compromise, Luo Chet would have to accept it. No matter how much Bruce wanted to help his daughter, he wouldn't be able to be forceful. She had to rely on herself. Xia Luo thought so as she clenched her fists. After the banquet began, she immediately went to visit Kadia and received a response. Aucott family's patriarch, Kadia Aucott. You must be Mr. Bruce's daughter. It's a pleasure to meet you, Miss Xia Luo. This was how Kadia introduced himself to Xia Luo. His words were very formal and his attitude was very cordial. But when she heard Kadia's words, the girl's heart immediately sank. It was fine if outsiders didn't know about it, but Kadia clearly knew that Xia Luo and Luoya had a century-old marriage contract. Strictly speaking, Xia Luo was Kadia's future daughter-in-law. But this time, when they met, the Marquis actually talked to her as if she was an outsider. He didn't even mention a word about the marriage contract. To be honest, this was the worst-case scenario that Xia Luo predicted. It didn't mean that he refused to marry her, but rather that he didn't acknowledge their relationship at all. Xia Luo, who felt bitter in her heart, forced herself to say a few polite words to Kadia and the others before leaving. She knew that things had just begun, and it was far from reaching the point where the outcome would be decided. But the huge pressure from Luoya's parents made her uneasy. And at this moment, the silver-haired girl met her on a narrow path. From the beginning of the greeting, the two girls were full of sarcasm. And as the conversation deepened, the two girls who had met once gradually began to see red. Miss Xia Luo, you seem to have a wide range of sightseeing. As expected of the eldest daughter of the Sorofia family, you even want to return home to see the scenery. It's just that Luoya wants to see the scenery of a foreign country. It's Sorofia's honor to have him here. Hee, when you say see, are you referring to being kidnapped by some despicable people? Is this a unique custom of the French? Miss Ai Lizi, please don't misunderstand. And in my opinion, isn't it despicable for some people to deliberately destroy the relationship between an engaged couple when they're not paying attention? Xia Luo's emerald eyes sharpened, and Ai Lizi's crimson eyes shrank. The two looked at each other, and the laughter in their ears seemed to be getting further and further away. After a long silence, The silver-haired girl finally spoke again. Xia Luot, do you think you can do whatever you want? Do you think I'm weak in front of you? You have a chance, but it's only because I never took the initiative to attack before you came. This is my last warning. Return my brother to me immediately. Chapter 197. Rose's Council Hall was a new wonder building with only 100 years of history. The construction of the entire council hall cost millions of gold coins, which was the most expensive in all countries, and it was famous for two things. First, it covered a large area and even had a racetrack. Second, the banquet hall could be stargazed. The Sorofia family had a unique advantage in divination and prophecy, and these two were more or less related to astrology. Therefore, stargazing in the Rose area was an elegant thing, and it was also a common activity between couples. It was like a step before a confession. Xia Luo took Luoya to stargazing to some extent for this purpose. But tonight, the black-haired boy didn't watch the stars with the young lady, but enjoyed the night breeze on the balcony of the 100 Birds Hall. Looking at the tall and majestic building in the city center, and listening to the noise of the revelers in the distant streets, Luoya couldn't help but sigh slightly. He picked up the small wine jug on the table beside him and took a sip. Well, it was quite sweet. Tasting the specialty Pamela wine that Akat brought back, Luoya's mood calmed down a little. He was alone tonight, naturally, not because he was neglected or abused by Xia Luot. In fact, the young lady wanted to attend the banquet with him, but after thinking about it again and again, Luoya refused. There was no other reason except that Luoya's appearance could easily aggravate the conflict. If it was only Ai Lizi who came to pick him up, then as the acting lord, Luoya wouldn't have to worry at all. But this time, it was Luoya's father, Kadia, who led the team. Luoya couldn't do it. In terms of relationship, Kadia was Luoya's father, and he was someone he had to respect. He was also the head of the family when he was a minor. In terms of status, Kadia was also a real marquis, which was much higher than Luoya, who was just an acting marquis. If Luoya showed up now, Kadia told him to go home immediately. What would Luoya do? Abandon Xia Luot and leave immediately? Or did he defy his father's orders and insist on staying? It was obvious that neither option was good, so Luoya decided to hide. As the saying goes, running away was shameful, but it was useful. Luoya prayed for good weather and peace in the world, but he didn't know that on the other side, the atmosphere between the two girls was already dark and stormy. In the meeting hall, Xia Luot and Ai Lizi looked at each other. The two girls, who had perfect etiquette towards outsiders, still had smiles on their faces. They raised their glasses as if they were the best of friends. Their perfect appearance and beautiful friendship caused a commotion and whispers in the nearby crowd. Some of the noble ladies began to get excited, and the young talents couldn't help but steal glances at them worriedly. After all, in their eyes, the two girls were perfect targets to pursue. If they were to be internally digested, half of their peers in Rosetta City would be heartbroken. However, what they didn't know was that they didn't have a chance from the beginning. The two girls weren't just affectionate on the surface, but there was a murderous intent hidden under their smiles. Xia Luot, do you think you can get elder brother just because you took him away from Akat Hill? Heh, your final struggle will only embarrass yourself even more. Whether it's a final struggle or a revival from the dead, these are still undetermined. But Miss Ai Lizi, no matter how Luoya and I are, we are still engaged, but you don't seem to be the same, do you? The reddish-brown-haired girl smiled and shook her wine glass. She raised her head and looked at Ai Lizi's narrowed eyes and asked, "You're just Luoya's adopted sister who isn't related by blood. Aren't you being too nosy? My love for elder brother is eternal. What does it matter if we aren't related by blood? It's just right, isn't it?" Sure enough, your goal isn't as simple as brother and sister. But unfortunately, in my eyes, you're not a threat. The reddish-brown-haired girl nodded in understanding, and said lightly in front of Ai Lizi, who was frowning, "Your relationship with Luoya is indeed deep. It's accumulated over the years. I can't compare, but unfortunately, you don't understand love. You're on the wrong path." Xia Luot looked at the silver-haired girl with pity, and looked in the direction of the 100-bird garden with gentle eyes. He's a very emotional person, but he's not a very sensitive person. He's not that delicate when it comes to relationships. Your kindness and love may seem obvious to others, but in the eyes of Luoya, who grew up with you, these can all be attributed to familial love. You think you've won, but in fact, you've lost from the beginning. Facing Xia Luo's unreserved analysis, the silver-haired girl unconsciously lowered her head and clenched her fists. Without a doubt, Xia Luo's words hit her where it hurts. But after careful consideration, Ai Lizi's expression returned to normal. I've said it before. I've never attacked before. No, that's why it doesn't matter what you do now. It does. Ai Lizi calmly and decisively denied Xia Luo's assertion. She looked up at the silver moon in the sky, and her eyes shone brightly. 3 times. What? Elder brother missed me at least 3 times when you took him away, and he couldn't help but say it at least once. Chapter 198. Bishop Philip was an honest man. This was something that everyone in the Holy See knew. He was humble, courteous, and abided by the rules. He had always been a role model for the judges, and he also had outstanding achievements. A few years ago, when the Holy Capital was in turmoil during the New Year, Bishop Philip had found and protected the missing Princess Nua Iyer and young Master Luoya of the Akat family. This was the reason why he was chosen by Nua Iyer. Of course, what Bishop Philip didn't know was that he had an even greater contribution in the heart of Nua Iyer, and that was the scene of Nua Iyer and Luoya kissing while unconscious to the Akat family. In the eyes of Princess Nua Iyer, this was a fatal blow to Ai Lizi, but the honest Philip didn't realize this. Sigh, isn't this the request of her family? This is what I should do. You don't know how anxious the little girl was at that time. The brother-sister relationship is deep, and the Akat family is united and harmonious. Philip sighed like this whenever he met someone, looking like an old single person who longed for the warmth of a family. And today, this feeling came again. Looking at Princess Nua Iyer flying towards the tall city in the distance under his spell, Bishop Philip remained silent. Philip and the other guards accompanying Princess Nua Iyer didn't know the reason for Princess Nua Iyer's personal visit to Ratchet. Before this, he always thought that Princess Nua Iyer wanted to secretly sign some agreement with Ratchet. It was only until Nua Iyer stood at the front of the car and looked at the city on the horizon while muttering Xia Luo's name that Philip finally understood. So that was the case. Indeed, outstanding people would often be attracted by equally outstanding people. There were very few people of the same age who could get along with the talented Princess Nua Iyer, and those of the same status could be counted with one's fingers. And Xia Luo of the Sorofia family was the most suitable one. No wonder this trip was so low-key. Princess Nua Iyer. She was here to visit a friend. They had traveled thousands of miles to come here, and their sisterhood was so deep. Philip looked at the blonde girl and sighed. No matter what era it was not easy to maintain a friendship across countries, especially in the context of a country. Personal friendship often involved greater interests, and any meeting would be magnified and interpreted. Her Royal Highness and Rose's Miss Xia Luo must be the same. However, despite all the difficulties, the Nua Iyer still came this time. If Philip remembered correctly, today should be Rose's Liberation Day. Her Royal Highness must have wanted to arrive on this day to give her friends a surprise. Unfortunately, because of Philip's schedule, she was delayed. Along the way, Philip could not help but sigh as he looked at the blonde girl who was trembling with clenched fists in the distance. Sigh, look at how anxious the child is. The guilt-ridden bishop no longer hesitated. He decisively stepped forward and cast a bloodline curse on the Nua Iyer, causing her to soar into the sky. Looking at the girl's figure flying into the distance, Philip was satisfied. This way he would be able to catch up. To appear in front of Miss Xia Luo on Liberation Day. Was there a bigger surprise than this? The relationship between the heirs could to some extent determine the future relationship between the two countries. This time, his assistance was not only for the sake of the little sisters who had been separated for a long time, but also for the sake of the relationship between the two countries in the long run. Thinking of this, the middle-aged bishop showed a sincere smile on his face. May our friendship last forever. Today was not a peaceful day in Rosetta City. In the context of Liberation Day, the citizens were singing and drinking to their heart's content. In the council hall, unexpected guests also brought the atmosphere of the banquet to its climax. Uncle Bruce, it has been a few years since we last met. Please forgive me for taking the liberty to visit. Haha, Your Royal Highness is too polite. Your visit is an honor for Rose. Thank you for your hospitality. I, Nua Heath Crete, on behalf of the theocracy, offer my blessings to the people of Rose who have won their freedom. I hope the friendship between our two countries can last forever. At the front of the banquet hall, the blonde Nua was greeting Bruce. A few minutes ago, the sudden arrival of Her Royal Highness caused a huge commotion. Xiaoluot and Ai Lizi, who were fighting, could not help but stop. The two girls were surprised by the Nua's arrival. However, in the banquet hall, the two sides did not choose to fight directly. Instead, they went through the formalities. After landing, Nua immediately announced her identity and greeted the host, Bruce, fully showing her respect for Rose. After that, she gave an opening speech to all the guests and lifted her skirt, which made the people of Rose even more excited. The princess of the theocracy of Saint Maester was of noble status. Usually, she lived in seclusion and rarely went out. The number of times she went abroad could be counted with one's fingers. The arrival of such a person naturally brought about a celebrity effect. In the midst of the commotion, the blonde princess finally had time to meet her nemesis. On both sides of the platform, the graceful angel and the noble elf looked at each other from afar. Their gazes collided across space, and the magic power in the air fluctuated faintly. Source Level 4. This was the strength of the two girls, and at the same time, it also represented their top talents. After the initial observation and testing, Nua found that it was difficult to determine the strength of both sides. She could not use her aura to suppress the other party, so she changed her strategy. She curled the corner of her mouth and turned to the other main character in the banquet hall. Uncle Kadia, you arrived first. How was your journey? Thank you for your concern, Your Royal Highness. My body was fine even when I was on the front line. Naturally, I don't need to worry about it in the rear. That's good. Luoya is not here, so I have to take care of Uncle. Otherwise, my father will scold me. Haha, Prince Kai-en is making a mountain out of a molehill. In the music, Xiaoluot looked at the girl who was chatting happily with Kadia in the distance. Her face suddenly turned pale. Her hand that was holding the wine glass tightened slightly. She felt as if something was falling from her heart. Chapter 199. Was Luoya injured? This was undoubtedly the most important question. The answer might even have the ability to influence the current situation. But at the same time, this was also an Achilles heel that Xiaoluot couldn't answer. In fact, Luoya's current situation couldn't be described as injured. He could basically be considered old, weak, sick, and disabled. This was also the reason why Xiaoluot's current situation was so unfavorable. Originally, Miss Luoya's plan was to treat Luoya's illness after Luoya's treatment. When the two families came chasing after them, the two of them would come out together. With Bruce's Taiji fist, they could basically turn big problems into small ones and small ones into nothing. However, no one expected that Luoya's illness would be so difficult to deal with. Even a renowned master like Andrew was helpless. But strangely enough, ever since he heard the cure from Andrew, Luoya, as the patient, was no longer anxious. These days he drank tea, strolled around, and enjoyed the scenery with Xiaoluot. He even comforted Xiaoluot, saying that he had found a cure. Miss Luoya's worried fiancé was very touched by Luoya's words, but she also knew that it was impossible. The tree of life was gone, so where could Luoya find a cure? As for the special bloodline that had almost unlimited vitality, Luoya was always together with Xiaoluot. The young lady had never seen him take the initiative to contact anyone. Could it be that this bloodline that was 1 in a million could come to him on its own accord? My dear, you must be afraid that I'll be worried. Miss Luoya interpreted Luoya's words as a white lie. Thinking of this, she was even more touched. These days, she was even more gentle to the young man. At the same time, she started a large-scale bounty for items related to the Tree of Life. But so far, there was no news. Luoya's injury has healed, but the curse's side effects are still ongoing. Xia Luo pondered for a long time before revealing the truth. Nua Iyer raised her eyebrows and instinctively attributed the side effects to Gulandair. Her Royal Highness thought so and put the blame on the huge skeleton that was still in a state of autism. On the other side, Ai Lizi heard Xia Luo's words and heaved a sigh of relief. Thus, after confirming that Luoya was fine, the battle resumed. Miss Xia Luo, what you were discussing before. You seem to think that your relationship with Luoya is deep? It's not seem, it's the truth. Oh, if that's the case, then why did you kidnap me to come here? With such a deep relationship, is Luoya unwilling to come to Miss Xia Luo's hometown? That's naturally because of certain people's obstruction. My dear was worried that our relationship would be misunderstood by others, so he allowed me to return to Rouse to protect me. The reddish-brown-haired girl stared at Nua Iyer and lied without blushing. Then, her lips curled into a mocking smile. The most fortunate thing for me recently was that I had a misunderstanding with my dear when we first met under the influence of certain people. As a result, I performed 3 fate divinations to stabilize our relationship. From this point of view, we were blessed by fate and can be said to be a match made in heaven. Miss Xia Luo, you seem to be suffering from paranoia. Also, when you speak of fate with Lord Elder Brother, are you referring to an employment contract with real money and a clear price tag? Ai Lizi exposed Miss Xia Luo's true identity. Nua Iyer's eyes flashed with a cold glint. She didn't continue arguing with the girl, but calmly made an announcement. Xia Luo, that's enough. I understand your excuse, but unfortunately, I won't be deceived by your flowery words. I will bring Luoya back. You two are a match made in heaven? Luoya and I have known each other since we were 9 years old. Our story has been circulating in the holy capital since a few years ago. I'm afraid you haven't even heard of his name when we were together in life and death. He is mine. He has always been mine. He is now, and he will be mine in the future. Charlotte's tone was like a fuse that ignited the anger in Noelle's heart that had been suppressed for a long time. It was on the verge of exploding. Charlotte's tone was like a calm fuse that ignited the anger in Noelle's heart. Then what if I don't give it to you? Facing the angel's declaration, the red-haired girl replied. She took a step forward, and a spell began to secretly rise. In the past, Xia Luo might not have been Nua Iyer's match. However, in the journey of the historical fragment, Miss Xia Luo had gained more than Luoya. She had already broken through the limit of Source Level 5 and advanced to Source Level 4. Now that she had inherited her ancestors' legacy, she wouldn't allow herself to be inferior to her love rival. Moreover, another discovery made the girl's gaze sharpen. Miss Nua Iyer, has no one ever told you that you're strange? What? From your tone, you seem to treat Luoya as your possession. I can't ignore that. Xia Luo narrowed her eyes and stared into Nua Iyer's azure eyes. She calmly spoke. Although it's fine as a ruler, in terms of love, Miss Nua Iyer wouldn't be a tyrant, right? Chapter 200. Luoya Akit had a nightmare. The world in the dream was chaotic and dark, like a vast sea without a sun. Luoya walked on this sea, his heart full of helplessness and confusion. Unlike when he went to see Gulandair and Paitila, in this dream, Luoya's self-awareness was clearer, and there was no delayed numbness. However, this did not mean that he had a good experience this time. In fact, it was even worse. The ancient god's guidance blurred his consciousness. In some ways, this was actually a kind of protection for him. The pilgrimage consumed a lot of mental energy, and if it was not blurred, Luoya would have been exhausted when he saw Gulandair and the others. Standing in the darkness, Luoya's mind began to work slowly. He did not know what was going on, but he vaguely felt that there was a familiar aura here. It was under his feet. In the deep sea, there was a bone-chilling aura of frozen earth. That aura seemed to be active, calling for Luoya to come closer. After thinking for a while, the black-haired youth looked around and dived to the bottom of the sea without finding anything. There was no suffocating feeling in the dark bottom of the sea. A faint light appeared in Luoya's eyes. It was a blue dot in the bottom of the sea, a frost that was emitting light. As Luoyu approached, the light began to move. It jumped, as if it was attracted, and floated into Luoya's embrace. It was a joy like a swallow returning to its nest. Even without any communication, Luoya could feel it. After the frost entered his body, Luoya, who was floating in the water, began to emit an icy blue light that illuminated the surroundings. He knew by reflex that he was about to leave. However, in this moment of joy and harmony, an unimaginable pressure suddenly descended on the young man. His body seemed to be penetrated by something, and a sense of danger exploded in his heart. The young man abruptly turned around and looked into the distance. In the next moment, his body seemed to have been struck by lightning. What appeared there was a pair of eyes that flashed for a moment before disappearing. Ah, dear. In the bedroom of the 100-bird garden, Luoya, who was sleeping soundly, screamed and suddenly got up. He gasped for breath, and a layer of sweat appeared on his forehead and back. This appearance of waking up from a nightmare frightened the girl in pajamas beside him. Xia Luot sat up and looked at the youth who was widening his eyes and reaching out to touch his body. Her eyes softened, and at the same time, she breathed a sigh of relief. She climbed a step forward on the bed, straightened her body, and reached out to hug the youth's neck. She softly comforted him. Dear, did you have a nightmare? Phew, it seems. It's okay, it's okay. Yeah. Feeling the temperature of the red-haired girl, Roha glanced around and his breathing gradually calmed down. Charlotte looked at the boy and her desire to protect him increased. She couldn't help but hold him tighter. After a while, the girl spoke to divert Roha's attention. I'm really surprised. I thought you would never have such an expression. Ha! What expression? The expression of fear. After all, no matter what happened before, you've never been afraid. I didn't expect to see this side of you because of a nightmare. Everyone is afraid of nightmares. The black-haired youth retorted in the girl's arms. Xia Luot's smile deepened. She reached out to stroke the youth's hair and murmured. The last time I felt you were afraid was in the cabin of the golden battleship. That monster almost killed me. You were afraid then, right? Yeah. Feeling the affection of the girl beside him, the black-haired youth hesitated for a moment and nodded. I almost didn't make it. I was really scared. Do you care about me that much? Luoya blushed and turned his head away silently. Xia Luo cheered in her heart. So cute. I promise Sister Isha Bela to protect you. Besides, if anything happens to you, the Akot family will be in big trouble. Is that so? If that's the case, why did you rush out? Weren't you angry because he wanted to kill me? I was trying to prevent future trouble. Chapter 201. The next morning, the city gate of Rosetta was bustling with activity. At dawn, the delegation from St. Maester officially arrived in Rosetta, along with the long-detained gemstone necklace caravan. Gulacy and the others stayed in Akot for a week. During this week, other than not being able to leave without permission, there were no special restrictions. When the Akot family set off, they didn't bring them along because the caravan was too long, so they could only follow the Nuwa Ayers team back after Liberation Day. Missing the festival wasn't a big deal. After all, it was Rosetta's new year. But this time, following the Nuwa Ayers team back, Gulacy, who had collected a lot of information, was anxious. That's right, Gulacy was anxious because she heard something. If it was true, then her miss would be in a serious situation. When can I return to my post? Have we already entered the city? The maid who was detained in the carriage angrily complained to the soldiers, but the soldiers strictly forbade everyone from leaving the carriage. Gulacy looked at Bishop Philip, who was chatting in front of her, and sighing at the unique scenery of Rosetta. In the end, she didn't choose to force her way in. Miss. Gulacy looked into the distance and muttered to herself. At this time, in the city hall, the elegantly dressed Xia Luot was receiving Nuwa Ayer, who came to inquire, as well as the many legal personnel of the Holy See behind her. After entering the city today, the investigation and inquiry team of St. Maester, who was tasked with the mission of Akot Domain's proxy lord kidnapping case, set off together. Under the leadership of Nuwa Ayer, they aggressively came to the city hall to summon Xia Luot. Luo Ye temporarily stayed in the Hundred Birds Hall due to physical inconvenience, and the Holy See personnel took the initiative to visit and collect evidence. Xia Luo was already prepared for the princess's fist technique. Behind him, the legal team of the Luo Seti government was on standby. The confrontation between the two sides was white-hot. According to Article 4 of the National Security Law of the Theocracy of Saint Maester, when a local lord is kidnapped, resulting in the restriction of his freedom, the theocracy and the Highskrit royal family must take action and use all possible means to arrest, punish, and escort the criminal to the capital of the theocracy for trial. Now we suspect that Miss Xia Luo Tserofia of the United Nations is suspected of violating this safety law and has been charged with several charges. In the case of factual evidence, we have the right to forcibly arrest her. The white-haired old judge of the theocracy opened with an intimidating and threatening speech. His temperament and confidence in upholding justice for many years made him high-spirited. Even if everyone present knew that forcible arrest was nonsense, they still couldn't help but be shocked by the toughness in his words. However, as the saying goes, the east wind can't suppress the west wind. The theocracy's attitude was tough, but Luo Seti's attitude wasn't weak either. Under the gaze of the judge, an old man with a white beard stood up shakily. It was the former head of the Luo Seti legal department. The old man took a deep breath and stood up straight. He didn't back down and refuted. According to the special clause in the White Paper on Strategic Cooperation between the Rose Business United Nations and the Akat Territory, when the children of one party encounter danger or suffer serious injuries during war, the other party has the responsibility and obligation to provide them with a safe environment and complete treatment. Now that the eastern region is at war, Marquis Kadia of Akat Territory is one of the participants, which means that Akat Territory is in an abnormal state of war. In this state, Miss Xia Luo Tserofia of the United Nations determined that Akat Territory couldn't provide complete treatment when Marquis Kadia is not present. It is reasonable, and legal to bring him to Luo Seti for treatment. As for the crime and kidnapping, it is a misunderstanding caused by poor communication between the two sides. Please be careful with your words. The two old men, whose combined age was more than 200 years old, glared at each other across the table. Their 4 eyes were like light bulbs, and after the one who took the lead rushed forward, the support personnel and assistants at the back also began to do their best. The so-called White Paper on Strategic Cooperation between the Rose Commercial United Nations and the Akat Territory is just a private agreement signed between the local feudal lord and a foreign country. It has no legal effect on the Saint Maester theocracy. The national security law is much higher than it. According to the Third Agreement of Human Countries, the local law is the priority to adjudicate the private disputes between the local lords. The strategic agreements between the territories have discretion. The Luo Ye Akat incident this time is an international incident that affects the stability of the theocracy of Saint Maester and the authority of Nuwa Iyer Princess Heidikrit. It cannot be defined as a private matter between the lords. Please do not mislead the public. A fierce confrontation took place in the legal office. The two sides involved were the top legal talents of the two countries. For a time, the laws were flying everywhere. Books after books were flipped. The laws of the theocracy of Saint Maester, the laws of Akat Territory, the laws of the United Nations of Saint Maester, and even the Strategic Alliance and the Human Common Agreement were used as cannonballs. The Chief Justice of the theocracy, Koster, and the former legal officer of the United Nations of Saint Maester, Karu, were arguing tit for tat. They refuted each other and gradually became angry. One was gnashing his teeth, while the other was glaring. In a situation where they were evenly matched, the two sides were no longer just trying to get a man for their little mistress. This battle gradually evolved into a direct confrontation between the legal system of the theocracy of Saint Maester and the legal system of the United Nations of Saint Maester and the legal system of the United Nations of Saint Maester. If they lost, not only would Xia Luot and Nuwa Iyer be dissatisfied, they would also be unable to raise their heads in front of the other side in the future. For 3 hours, neither side had the upper hand in the war of words. Although the investigation team of the Nuwa Iyer was attacking, whether it was the crime of Xia Luot or the possible violation of the law. They could not be established under the cover of the United Nations of St. Maester. The reddish-brown-haired girl took a sip of tea. She was not surprised by this result. In fact, she had put in a lot of effort for this day. Everyone on the United Nations of St. Maester was an experienced defense expert. The former legal officer, Karu, was personally invited by Bruce. How could they lose? The condition for the establishment of a restriction of personal freedom is that the person being restricted has the will to move freely. During the journey of Miss Xia Luot and young Master Luo Yoakat, we have strictly consulted their will. We even carried out activities such as stargazing and other entertainment activities. There is no doubt that this does not meet the definition of a kidnapping. After another round of debate, the theocracy of St. Maester still did not make any progress. Chief Justice Coster turned his head to look at the princess sitting behind him. His eyes moved slightly as he nodded. I see. Then we will temporarily put aside the criminal complaint of Xia Luot. Next, we will inquire about the marriage between Xia Luot and Luo Yoakat. As soon as the Chief Justice said this, the hall fell into silence. The legal personnel on the United Nations of St. Maester's side looked at each other and gradually relaxed. There was no other reason other than the fact that although marriage contracts were formulated based on the marriage laws of various countries, they were basically at the edge of the law. Generally speaking, there wouldn't be any problems. Under the circumstances where Charlotte wasn't convicted, it was almost impossible to overturn it. If asked, it would be resolute in fulfilling it. The most difficult moment had passed. It seemed that the United Nations of St. Maester needed to rest and adjust. With this thought in mind, the legal personnel who had been fighting for a few hours heaved a sigh of relief. It was almost noon. After working for so long, some of them were already thinking about lunch. In the midst of this silence, Chief Justice Coster asked in a clear voice. Chapter 202. Luoya was a little worried when he heard that Ai Lizzie had taken on the task of curing the life exhaustion. After all, in his heart, Ai Lizzie was still a girl who needed protection. She had never shown her extraordinary power in front of Luoya. Oh no, she had shown it before. Occasionally, the girl would lean on him and do maintenance on the ancient books when he was reading. This was probably the time when Ai Lizzie showed her curse to Luoya the most. But the problem was that this curse could be used as low as source rank 6, so he couldn't see its level at all. Because of this, Luoya didn't leave everything to Ai Lizzie. Instead, he called Old Man Andrew and asked him to see if Ai Lizzie's bloodline talisman met the requirements. When the white-haired Old Man Andrew walked through the door and looked at Ai Lizzie beside the boy, Luoya's heart couldn't help but jump. But in the next moment, Andrew's old eyes widened. What's going on? Can it really be found? Is this possible? The old man who had lived for more than 100 years and had never seen such a special bloodline used a curse to stare at Ai Lizzie carefully. He found that the life energy in the girl's body was far beyond that of an ordinary person. Seeing this, Andrew breathed a sigh of relief and had an expression of gratitude. Luoya could be saved. Not only was Luoya happy, but the experts who had been thinking about how to save him were also happy. One must know that the Akot family had already arrived in Rosetta City. Andrew and the others were under a lot of pressure. They scratched their ears and cheeks every day, trying to figure out how to cure him. But unfortunately, going bald couldn't solve the problem. It could only reflect the light in front of the problem. When Old Man Andrew was young, he didn't work, so his white hair was still elegant and thick. But his beard couldn't stand it anymore. Every day, when he thought about problems, he would stroke his beard. Whenever there was a problem, he would use force. In the past 2 days, he had pulled out more than 20 hairs. So when he saw Ai Lizzie, he was as excited as seeing a relative. Child, your situation should meet the standard. Don't be nervous. Can you materialize your life force? At this moment, Luoya, who was beside Ai Lizzie, suddenly felt refreshed and excited for no reason. In his perception, Ai Lizzie was like a silver moon. Boundless vitality overflowed around her, making Luoya feel as if he was immersed in a cold spring. He felt refreshed. At the same time, the silver-haired girl opened her eyes in a timely manner. She gently raised her hand. and a little bird formed from white energy appeared out of thin air, standing on her palm and looking around. Andrew's dim old eyes widened at the sight, and he almost jumped up and cheered. This is too shocking. I didn't think that life energy could be refined to such a degree. The old man took a few steps forward, took out a magnifying glass from his pocket, and observed the little bird in Ai Lizzie's hand. It was obvious that he had never seen such a scene before. The silver-haired girl, who had proven her ability to treat Luoya, smiled when she saw this. The black-haired boy also heaved a sigh of relief. Incredible! Is this the special bloodline of the life type recorded in the book? It feels more exaggerated than the records. Andrew said to himself excitedly, but Luoya smiled bitterly at the side. The old man probably didn't know that Ai Lizzie's real bloodline ability was at night. It was now daytime. Strictly speaking, it was the time when her bloodline ability was the weakest. Grandpa Andrew, look at Ai Lizzie's situation. It's enough, it's completely enough. What's the specific treatment method? Is it to use any curse vessel? No, life energy is not curse power. The curse vessel is difficult to bear. The specific treatment method is formulated according to the strength of the bloodline. Andrew put down the magnifying glass and carefully explained to Luoya, the patient. According to the ancient records, the dew of the tree of life was also divided into grades. The high-grade dew could be applied externally, and it didn't even need to be drunk. The low-grade dew not only needed to be drunk, but also needed to find several medicines to enhance the effect. However, as the saying goes, every medicine has its own side effect. No matter how the treatment was done, there would be side effects if the dosage was wrong. And what are the side effects if the dosage is too high? About this, Andrew, who was asked this question, looked a little hesitant. He glanced at Ai Lizzie, who was also looking at him curiously. After struggling for a long time, he felt that he should explain it clearly. Life energy is the basic power of creatures. There is not much side effect if there is too much. It's just energetic, especially energetic. Does it mean that you can't sleep at night? Luoya asked tentatively. Andrew was embarrassed when he heard the words. It's true that you can't sleep, but it's not that kind of insomnia. Too much life energy, will greatly stimulate the reproductive function and desire of creatures. In fact, the density of animals near the tree of life is very high, and they will consciously act as the guardians of the tree of life. It should be the reason why it is conducive to the reproduction of creatures. As for the treatment of the special bloodline, the principle should be similar. The old man's voice echoed in the room. Luoya couldn't help but feel embarrassed when he heard this explanation. On the other side, the silver-haired girl suddenly widened her eyes. Her crimson pupils emitted light, and she looked at the young man on the side deeply. Then she immediately lowered her head to cover it up, and her eyes flickered. This, Master Andrew, as long as it's not too much, it should be fine, right? Indeed, what I said should be the case of excess. As long as you control it carefully, it should not be so serious. How should I do it specifically? It's not written in this record, but it doesn't matter. We can try it. There are only a few methods. Chapter 203. Xia Luot Sorofia had never thought that she would one day encounter such a huge problem. According to the marriage law of the Russian Merchant Union, there is indeed no problem with the two parties entering into a marriage contract. However, according to the marriage law of the Saint Mestre theocracy, the longest marriage contract signed by the nobles of the theocracy is 150 years, and it must be within 3 generations. In the legal office, the theocracy's chief judge Koster calmly read out this law, causing all the members of the Russian Merchant Union to widen their eyes. At the back, the reddish-brown girl's face stiffened, and she almost couldn't believe her ears. As of now, Xia Luot and Luoya's marriage contract had only been signed for a little over 100 years, and it was still far from the 150 years limit. However, that wasn't the main point. It was the so-called, within 3 generations. Back then, Lord Branakat of Akat, who was also Luoya's grandfather, was only in his 20s when he helped the Russian Merchant Union to establish the kingdom. At that time, the head of the Sorofia family, Dindit Sarofia, was almost 60 years old, more than 30 years older than Bran. Although in this world, extraordinaries in their 50s were considered to be in their prime, it was obvious that they weren't from the same generation. When the marriage contract was signed, Dindit's daughter was already in her 40s, and was already married. Naturally, he didn't want to marry off his daughter, but rather his granddaughter. However, Bran was already married at that time, so the marriage contract was postponed. However, when the marriage contract was extended to 100 years later, there was a huge problem. Luoyo Akot, as Bran's grandson, was the third generation and was within the marriage contract's validity. However, Xia Luot Sarofia was Dindit's great-granddaughter, so she was the fourth generation. In other words, the marriage contract was invalid in Xia Luot's generation. When the theocracy mentioned this fact, all the members of the Russian Merchant Union were stunned. The next moment, a loud bang came from Xia Luot. What a joke! The reddish-brown-haired girl slammed the solid wooden table in front of her into pieces in a fit of anger. She stood up and glared at Noelle. However, the blonde girl was quite calm in the face of Charlotte's fierce attack. She took a sip of tea and looked at Charlotte and asked calmly, "What's the matter?" "What? Miss Xia Luot, do you have any questions?" "Of course. Do you think I haven't read the laws of the theocracy before? There's no additional clause at all." "Hehe, are you finally beginning to lose your mind? Have you read the original case of the marriage law of the Church of Saint Maester? If you haven't seen it, please speak carefully. We will record any slander you make. Also, Miss Xia Luot, you seem to have misunderstood me. I didn't deny the marriage contract between the Akot family and the Sarofia family. I only denied you." The golden-haired angel recalled Charlot's words last night, and he happily retaliated with a smile on his face. The marriage contract between Akot and Sarofia is a century-old one. It has deep historical significance. Why would I break such a contract? I just want it to be carried out according to the agreement. But Xia Luot, you can't do it, but your aunts can. You. Young miss, please calm down. Facing Xia Luot, who was completely enraged by the Nua ire, the former legal officer of the Russian Merchant Union, Karu, hurriedly gestured to stop her. The experienced old man narrowed his eyes. He knew that anger was useless now. It was time to show his skills. "Judge Coster, may I ask what year the 43rd Amendment to the marriage law of the Church of Saint Maester was passed? Was the original case brought? As far as I know, at least in the laws issued by the Russian Merchant Union, there is no such article. The amendment to the law was made 120 years ago in the autumn of the Third Era, in the year 890. At that time, there were many cases of marriage contract fraud. In order to stabilize the order among the nobles, the judicial system of the Church of Saint Maester made amendments to the marriage law. 4 articles were added to it. This is one of them." Judge Coster confidently brought up these old matters to increase the credibility of the Church of Saint Maester. However, Karu didn't buy it. The old man with the white beard waved his hand and angrily rebuked the judge. "Ridiculous. Judge Coster, this is the sacred legal hall. Please be careful with your words. The amendment to the Church of Saint Maester was made 120 years ago? Then why hasn't this section been published in the Church of Saint Maester's legal code? That's because the Church of Saint Maester's legal code is for all citizens. The amendment to the marriage law of the Church of Saint Maester was set up separately for the nobles. It has never been printed on a large scale. However, there have been dozens of cases decided based on the amendment in the past century. This is an undeniable fact." "I see. Then I will admit the existence of the amendment to the 43rd Amendment to the marriage law of the Church of Saint Maester. However, I would like to question the time and jurisdiction of the amendment. In my opinion, although the amendment was made early, it was published later than the time when the marriage contract between Akot and Sarofia was signed. On the other hand, the marriage contract between us and Akot was signed in the territory of Saint Maester, not the Church of Saint Maester. Therefore, the amendment to the Church of Saint Maester should not involve the Sarofia family." The former head of the legal department, Karu, had dragged the entire conference into a quagmire. At this point, both sides were completely at loggerheads, and all kinds of dirty tricks were used. Judge Coster was disgusted by Loche's close combat. He desperately emphasized the reliability and authenticity of the Church of St. Maester's law, but Carew turned a blind eye to it. He only insisted on 2 points. One was the confirmation letter from the Aucott family regarding the amendment to the law, and the other was the scope of application of the Church of St. Maester's supplementary clause. A fierce battle unfolded in the legal hall. The scene was fierce beyond imagination. However, at the back, the red-haired girl's heart was cold. In any case, her marriage contract with Luo Ye had become a major point of dispute. Before the two sides reached a conclusion, it was basically invalid. Although Xia Luo could rely on a strong legal team to not completely lose the marriage contract, she could no longer enforce it under reasonable circumstances. Xia Luo's strongest weapon was useless. The battle in the legal hall of St. Maester was fierce. On the other side, in the Sorofia manor, Ai Lizi's heart was also burning. Not long ago, when Andrew said that he could use the life energy of realization to heal, Luo Ye could be said to be relieved. After all, the bird in Ai Lizi's palm was so vivid. When it first appeared, it even made Luo Ye's body faintly resonate with it. At first glance, it was obvious that the effect was significant. If this bird went down, even if it didn't cure the disease, at least it wouldn't be far from recovery, right? The black-haired boy smiled as he thought so. Then he saw the cute bird that he had high hopes for fall in front of his eyes. Chapter 204. In the council hall, the confrontation between Xia Luo Sorofia and Nua Iyer Heathcrete had entered the intermission. Due to the intense confrontation in the second half of the morning, the tension between the legal team and the Inquisition team was very strong. Therefore, the plan to have lunch together was temporarily cancelled. However, as VIPs, Nua Iyer and Xia Luo's lunch couldn't be cancelled. No matter how fierce the fight was in the legal office, the nobles had to abide by the etiquette, especially when it came to a state guest like Noel, who came to congratulate them. They had to be courteous to send them off. Therefore, this noon, Xia Luo must hold her nose and sit with Nua Iyer, even if she couldn't wait for the woman opposite her to disappear immediately. The same situation applied to Nua Iyer. Miss Angel also had to be polite and respectful, even if she wanted to beat Xia Luo up. The two young ladies with fake smiles on their faces began their lunch. From a certain point of view, this lunch could be considered peaceful. After all, both sides were very restrained. However, there was no lack of soft knives and verbal sparring. Miss Nua Iyer, what do you think of this wine? It's okay, but the sweetness is too strong. As expected, the taste of the Rose region doesn't suit me. It's just like the owner of this wine. This wine is called Pamela wine. It's a specialty from the southern mountains of Aucott. Xia Luo added with a smile. As soon as the words left her mouth, the blonde girl's body stiffened. After a moment of silence, Miss Angel picked up the wine glass and took another sip. If you taste it carefully, it's not bad. Although Aucott is close to the Rose region, the taste isn't that extreme. It's just like its owner. In the face of the princess' 180-degree change in expression and the classic double standards, Charlotte was speechless. She thought for a while before readjusting her state of mind. She looked at the wine glass and said faintly, "This is a good wine that I tasted with my dear on my way back. It's very suitable for the taste of the Rose people. It's as sweet as our fateful love. I've decided to make it one of our business partners and promote it as a new summer product in various countries." "Huh? Miss Xia Luo, what are you talking about? Are you talking in your sleep? I'm not used to it." Facing Xia Luo's public display of affection, Nua Iyer raised her eyebrows and sneered. "No way, Miss Xia Luo, you don't think that it's yours just because you found it, right? Let me tell you a fact. Aucott's first business partner is Heathcliff, and it will always be Heathcliff. Our two families have signed countless contracts. As a specialty wine produced in Aucott, and produced in the St. Maester theocracy, it can only represent the common fruit of our two families. There's no need to trouble Sorofia Chamber of Commerce with the promotion. Just leave it to the Vatican. After all, this is also a specialty of the St. Maester theocracy. Your Highness Nua Iyer, you don't seem to understand the principle of business priority. But you still understand the principle of first come first serve, right? I think you need to respect this principle of fairness based on time, especially for contracts that are 100 years in advance. Miss Yaluot, I think I've made it clear enough. I acknowledge the marriage contract signed in Akat. It's just that the scope of the marriage contract does not include you. Please don't use your identity as Luoya's fiancé to flatter yourself. On the dining table, there was a crisp sound of a knife hitting the bottom of the table. Charlotte, who had been poked in her sore spot, was furious. However, she was forcefully suppressing her anger. On the other hand, Miss Angel, who was sitting opposite her, appeared calm and composed. By the way, Miss Nuair, do you know? Honey, you like to hug something when you're sleeping. Xiaoluot, who thought of something, suddenly narrowed her eyes and explained to Nuair with a smile. Her bright smile was even colder than the cold light of a sword. It should be because she subconsciously lacks a sense of security. After all, my dear seems to have a lot on her mind. Every time she hugs me, I feel very warm, so warm that I hesitate to continue sleeping. However, I don't think Miss Nuair has experienced this before. I'm sorry, I said something you don't understand. Xiaoluot. The golden-haired girl gritted her teeth as the young miss showed off. She took a few deep breaths to calm her emotions, and also revealed a smile on her face. By the way, I remember that year in the holy capital, Luoya and I formed a guardian relationship with Uncle Kadia and grandfather in front of thousands of people. Since ancient times, the approval of one's family has been an important factor in love. Speaking of which, Miss Yaluot, your relationship seems to have never received the blessings of your elders. This is really regrettable. Nuair's words made the brown-haired girl's expression turn ugly. After a round of insulting each other, the two of them glared at each other, and were so angry that they couldn't eat. In this silence, Xiaoluot's maid suddenly stepped forward and leaned over to whisper in her ear. It was news from Andrew. After giving guidance to Ai Lizi and Luoya, Grandpa naturally wanted to inform Xiaoluot of the good news of Luoya's recovery. After all, Luoya's recovery would give Luochet more confidence in the negotiations. Ai Lizi is actually a life force type bloodline possessor? When Xiaoluot heard this news, she couldn't help but be surprised. She finally understood why Luoya was so calm for so long. I see. I didn't expect it to be Ai Lizi. By the way, how are they going to treat her? Grandpa Andrew said it's a body fluid therapy. Chapter 205. Do you want to keep Ai Lizi by your side forever? Luoya could answer this question without hesitation. Yes, he really wanted to, but he couldn't say it. No matter what, Luoya was Ai Lizi's older brother. In his position, he shouldn't restrict Ai Lizi's development, but encourage her to explore more. After all, the world was huge, and there were many wonderful things waiting for others to discover. But people were selfish, and Luoya was no different. The desire to keep Ai Lizi by his side every day did exist, and when Ai Lizi asked him to choose, he couldn't control his thoughts, especially after Ai Lizi's series of ambushes made him dizzy. Looking at the girl who was looking at him affectionately, Luoya knew that it was probably because of her recent experience of being kidnapped, or Xiaoluot's words that provoked Ai Lizi, causing her to go berserk. But looking at the girl's tender red eyes, Luoya couldn't refuse her no matter what. Ai Lizi's beauty was soul-stirring. Although Luoya could get used to this soul-stirring, when she revealed an expression that was different from before, his defenses would be easily broken through. Yes. After hesitating for a long time, the black-haired boy still said something that he shouldn't have said. After hearing Luoya's answer, Ai Lizi was so excited that her body trembled. She hugged her lover in front of her with so much force that Luoya felt a little pain, but it also made him slightly sober. I understand, big brother as well. You want to be with Ai Lizi forever. The silver-haired girl said this in Luoya's ear. Her emotions were about to go out of control, but Luoya, who had slightly regained his senses, pressed down on her shoulder and forcefully pinched between his eyebrows to bring the topic back to the topic at hand. What else? Big brother, do you want to make me cry? Or do you want me to bleed and get hurt? No, that's not what I meant. After hearing Ai Lizi's words, Luoya stuttered and didn't know how to explain. but the silver-haired girl spoke righteously. Old Mr. Andrew said that I have to control my intake a little and not overdo it. If it's tears, I'll have to cry a few times. If there's too much life energy in the blood, it's hard to control. In the end, isn't saliva the most convenient? After listening to Elisa's explanation, Roja carefully thought about it. He found that saliva was indeed easy to secrete and easy to control. The dose of life energy was also small. From the functional point of view, it was almost perfect. Okay, it's like that, but Luoya's face was red, but he didn't say anything for a long time. He said it was ambiguous, but the kiss had already broken through the boundary of ambiguity. He said it was too intimate, but it also felt a little cold towards AI Lizzie. He said it wasn't ethical, but AI Lizzie wasn't related to him by blood. Although AI Lizzie was spoiled by Luoya like a little princess in the Alcott family, and Kadia was very satisfied with her. In fact, AI Lizzie had the right to leave the Alcott family at any time after she reached adulthood. In the beginning, Kadia adopted AI Lizzie to take care of her until she reached adulthood, and marry into a good family to comfort his comrade's soul in heaven. However, the series of changes that happened later made the Marquis want to digest her internally. Of course, it wasn't certain whether it was Luoya digesting AI Lizzie or AI Lizzie digesting Luoya. Elder brother, it seems that you still don't have a clear understanding of your situation. Seeing that Luoya's resistance had reached the final passive resistance and was about to be broken through, AI Lizzie was very excited, but her face was calm and serious. She seriously looked at Luoya's golden eyes, her eyes full of concern. Your current situation has already reached such a serious point. Do you still want to hold on to those meaningless feelings of shame? It's just a kiss compared to your body, which is more important, elder brother, don't you know? Under the attack of AI Lizzie as a medical personnel, the patient Luoya was speechless for a moment. The young boy carefully thought along the girl's line of thought, and realized that as a girl, AI Lizzie wasn't shy. As a man, he really shouldn't be shy. So that's how it is, I understand. Luoya nodded as if accepting his fate, and AI Lizzie, who had successfully fooled her elder brother, also smiled. She raised her hand and poured a glass of wine, downing it in one gulp, and fed Luoya again in the same way. However, behind Luoya's back, AI Lizzie's hand flashed with a pale white light. Pamela wine was mainly sweet, and due to the brewing process of this world, the alcohol content of the wine itself wasn't high. However, after drinking several glasses of wine with life energy, Luoya still felt a little strange. Very head. It's not the kind of head that bubbles come from the stomach, but the feeling of heat rushing through the body. The other feeling is the brain. He doesn't know if it's because of the wine and the energy complementing each other, but Roja vaguely felt a little bit. AI Lizzie, stop. I'm a little dizzy, and I don't know why, but I feel very hot. Realizing that the situation was getting worse, Luoya hurriedly called for a stop. Hearing this, the silver-haired girl raised her body meekly and hugged Luoya, but the hand behind his back increased the output of life energy in one go. Wine, ambiguous intimacy, excessive life energy, all the factors had come together one by one under AI Lizzie's plan. And under the effect of this combination, Luoya's breathing began to become heavier and heavier, and the various side effects began to become more and more obvious. Wait. What's going on? Why is blood congested? It's just a few mouthfuls of wine, no matter what, isn't this too much? Luoya, who noticed the reaction, panicked. He widened his eyes and his face flushed red, trying to hide it, but what he didn't know was that AI Lizzie wasn't a pure little white rabbit, but a big bad wolf that had set its sights on its prey. How could she let go of this opportunity? Big brother, what's wrong? Realizing that it was already the final moment, the girl with a smile on her face pretended not to notice and asked. Then, she looked down and slightly widened her eyes. After hesitating for a while, the girl bent down and whispered in Luoya's ear with a seductive fragrance. Chapter 206. When the blonde angel rushed into the door, she saw AI Lizzie's body sticking to Luoya's body. When she saw that she was about to finish the last step and eat the dessert, she was a little upset and angry. I'm fighting with Xiao Luod in the front, And you're painting green paint on my crown? Ai Lizzie, don't you dare. The moment she shouted this sentence, the light wings behind Nua Ire were already shining brightly. Her Royal Highness Princess chose to attack directly in anger. The bright light turned into a dozen golden chains, shooting at the silver-haired girl like arrows. At the same time, Xia Luot also attacked. A crisp sound sounded on Luoya's body. It was the sound of the glass bottle breaking. It was also the sound of Xia Luot's main battle curse vessel coming out of the cage. The Golden Soul, which stabilized Luoya's injury, responded to the master's curse power at this moment and bloomed with light. In an instant, the golden liquid expanded rapidly in the air, turning into a ball that wrapped Luoya, physically isolating Ai Lizzie outside. On the other side, the reddish-brown-haired girl had reached out and stroked the ring. Gem trigger. A voice with anger sounded. The gorgeous trigger curse vessel reappeared in Xia Luot's hand after many days. The anger in the girl's heart now was no less than that of Nua Ire. If Her Royal Highness Princess was angry because of being betrayed by her ally, then Xia Luot was angry because of this place. This was 100 Birds Hall, Xia Luot's home. Being cuckolded at home, no woman could bear this kind of treatment, let alone a noble lady. Bang! Along with the sound of the trigger being pulled, the gemstone shattered into bits of light powder. An ice-cold and slow curse suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and rapidly spread in Elisa's blood. The sudden arrival of the curse made Elisa's body feel as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Behind her, the golden chains had already rushed forward. Under the preemptive attack of Nua Ire and Xia Luot, Ai Lizzie could be said to be in a crisis. However, no matter how angry they were, they didn't let it get to their heads. They both understood that Ai Lizzie couldn't really be hurt, at least not in front of Luoya, so they used control spells. After the chain rushed out, Nua Ire didn't follow up with any spells, and Xia Luot also lowered the trigger. The two girls were confident in their moves, and also believed that under their cooperation, the silver-haired girl would inevitably fall. No matter what, Ai Lizzie was only an adopted child of the Akkad family, and didn't have Akkad's bloodline. Not to mention in Saint Maester theocracy, even in Akkad territory, she was unknown. Nua Ire could vaguely sense a threat from her every birthday, but she had never seen her make a move. As for Xia Luot, she didn't put Ai Lizzie in her eyes at all. In her eyes, the outcome was already decided. However, the result of the matter was far beyond their expectations. You two. How long do you want to hinder me and my elder brother? Under the invasion of the cold, the silver-haired girl roared and her body began to emit light. Her red eyes angrily glared at the two girls who ruined her plan, and she raised her finger and softly chanted, "Curse disintegration." The moment Ai Lizzie released the curse, an invisible wave gushed out from her body and swept through the room like a gust of wind. The chain that rushed towards her like an arrow disappeared like a painting erased by a painter, and the cold and stiffness in her body also returned to normal, as if it didn't exist. Nua Ire and Xia Luot, who were at the door, suddenly widened their eyes when the curse was released. It wasn't because their curse was cancelled, but because of the powerful anti-curse skill called Curse Disintegration. As a powerful countermeasure against extraordinary spellcasters, this skill was a must-learn for almost all extraordinary spellcasters. Even the extremist swordsmen who didn't know how to cast other curses would practice it. However, this curse couldn't escape from one principle, and that was that it needed to be suppressed by a level. When facing powerful curses like Nua Ire and Xia Luot, it needed to be one level higher to completely dispel it. In other words, it needed to be at source level 3. Source level 3? How is that possible? This little girl. Nua Ire and Xia Luot were shocked by this unbelievable fact. Ai Lizzie was 2 years younger than them, and reaching source level 4 at this age was already a terrifying talent. It was impossible for her to reach source level 3. If this was true, it would break the record of the extraordinary humans in history. Wait, she's still using other curses. I see. She's consuming her own life force to increase the power of the curse. Nua Ire suddenly understood when she saw the girl's body emitting a faint glow. Curse Overload was a curse that was relatively difficult to learn, and almost no one used it. The principle was very simple. And it was purely to increase the power of the curse. It could even release higher-level curses that didn't match the current level. The side effect was also simple and straightforward, which was to damage one's life force. Harming oneself in order to increase the power of one or two curses was a big taboo in actual combat, because almost no one could guarantee that they could defeat their opponent in a single move. However, this curse was tailor-made for AI Lizzie, and even the difficulty of Shiya's curse was reduced by half for her. This was because people with regenerative bloodlines didn't have to worry about the side effects. AI Lizzie, Akata, had reached source level 4 at such a young age, and it wasn't just because of her talent that Nua Iyer and the others thought. More importantly, it was because of her bloodline. Ordinary extraordinary humans might only be able to release 10 curses every day before they couldn't bear the side effects. But AI Lizzie could use her bloodline ability to practice dozens or even hundreds of times. If Xia Luo was a genius, and Nua Iyer was a genius who worked hard, then AI Lizzie was a genius who worked hard to break through the age gap. There was no doubt that there were many painful experiences in this kind of hard work, but in order to stay by her elder brother's side forever, AI Lizzie endured it all. This was also the reason why Kadia supported her. When he saw the girl repeatedly being injured and healed, but still releasing curses to become stronger, perhaps even a cold-hearted person would be moved. In fact, in Kadia's eyes, the most reliable member of the Akata family wasn't Luoya, nor was it the group of powerful and numerous guards, but AI Lizzie. Kadia believed from the beginning that if Luoya's life was in danger, this girl who usually didn't reveal her abilities would be able to disregard her own life and stand in front of him. Once AI Lizzie broke through to source level 3, she would be able to trade her life for his. Of course, Kadia didn't want this to happen, but this didn't stop him from acknowledging AI Lizzie. Chapter 207. Inside the 100 Birds Hall, inside the giant skeleton wrapped in red curses, a black-haired youth calmly looked at the three girls silently. Under his gaze, Nua Iyer, Xia Luot, and AI Lizzie were all stunned. The three girls looked at each other, and the scene fell into silence. Luoya looked at the three girls holding weapons and couldn't help but sigh. To be honest, Luoya still didn't understand the situation. From his perspective, before AI Lizzie finished exhaling in his ear, the door of the room flew open, and then the glass bottle containing the golden soul shattered. The golden liquid directly surrounded him, and after that, he could only rely on his curses to sense the situation. Although he couldn't see or hear, Luoya's curses were still quite good. Of course, another reason was that the three people outside were really lively. Whether it was Nua Iyer and Xia Luot's angry attacks, or the three people's fighting after that, everything in Luoya's perception was like a giant firework exploding beside him. In a trance, the black-haired youth felt like he was sitting on a mountain of firecrackers in a fireworks factory. He didn't know what to do as he felt the nearby mountains shaking. They're fighting? When this fact was reflected in Luoya's mind, the black-haired youth's first reaction was to not believe it. How is this possible? Who are the people here? Nua Iyer, the princess of the Papal Kingdom, the future leader of the Vatican, Xia Luot, the eldest daughter of Rose, the successor of Sorophia, AI Lizzie, the eldest daughter of the Akot family. No matter how you look at it, this lineup basically represented the top nobles in this world. As the representatives of noble ladies, they should be elegant, virtuous, and courteous. Even if they were angry, they should be careful to show the magnanimity of nobles. How could they fight like shrews? Thinking this, Luoya shook his head. He felt that something might have gone wrong. For example, the golden soul amplified the fluctuations of the curses. But as time passed, when he felt the physical shaking of the earth, the black-haired youth's face changed a little. Forget about the curses, the shaking of the earth couldn't be fake, right? What did the three ladies do to shake the earth? Luoya didn't know the answer to this question, but he knew that this was definitely not something that could be caused by a calm conversation. In a hurry, Luoya decisively decided to make a move. When he circulated his curses, he suddenly found the channel with the Gulan Daer reconnected. Luoya sighed at AI Lizzie's great healing pill. At the same time, had the courage to suppress the signs of a full-scale conflict. Luoya's goal of. The Gulandayer had achieved his goal. Tell me, what do you want to do? In the room, the black-haired youth patted the dust off his body and looked at the three stunned ladies from the huge skeleton. Recalling the scene just now, he couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. The attack of the three ladies just now was no joke. If the Gulandayer didn't break the collision of the curses, the 100 Birds Hall would have collapsed. More importantly, if there was a big movement, the matter of the princess of the theocracy, Miss Rosetta, and the young lady of the Akate family fighting would be completely exposed. Having a bad relationship in private and having a falling out in public were two different things, let alone rolling up their sleeves and fighting. No matter what the reason was, this matter would become a stain on the three ladies. Under Luoya's questioning, the three ladies gradually calmed down. They looked at each other and thought of the possible impact of this matter. For a moment they all fell silent. You Nua Ir Hiskrit represent the theocracy and the Holy See. You, Xia Luot Sorophia, represent Rosetta and Sorophia. You, Ai Lizi Akate, represent the Akate family, me and my father. Do you think the three of you can fight? The black-haired youth pointed at the ladies who made a big mistake one by one, and criticized their almost brainless behavior. Under Luoya's angry rebuke, Nua Ir looked away. Xia Luot lowered her head, and Ai Lizi directly wiped her eyes and cried. Because sob, I finally have time to be intimate with my big brother, but they're bothering me again, sob. Ai Lizi choked out her dissatisfaction. Her pitiful look made Luoya's heart ache. He wanted to rush over and hug her immediately, but now that all three of them were present, Luoya could only suppress his thoughts. He thought for a moment, sighed, and softened his tone a little. No matter what the reason is, the relationship between the three of you shouldn't be like this. Fighting is too much, not to mention a fight with such a big commotion. The high-level extraordinary Rosetta must have sensed your fight just now. My father and the others will probably rush over soon. What do you plan to say? Luoya's question was like a sharp knife stabbing into the hearts of the three impulsive ladies. Not to mention Xia Luot and Ai Lizi, whose fathers were about to arrive. Even Nua Ir's face turned a little pale. This, if you say it's a fight, it doesn't seem right. I'm afraid my father and the others won't believe it. Nonsense, the three of you are fighting in front of my sick bed? It would be strange if they would believe it. Luoya complained in his heart. He turned to look at the messy surroundings and the servants and guards who rushed over to look at them from the door. Luoya didn't want too many witnesses, so he decisively dispersed the crowd. Then he looked at the three girls and smiled bitterly. He felt a headache coming on. Before their parents arrived, Luoya said that he would help the three girls no matter what. Otherwise, if it really caused a conflict between the higher-ups, Luoya wouldn't be able to absolve himself from the blame. Moreover, the great impact on the future would cause Luoya's originally useless plot prediction to completely collapse. Gulandayer, it seems that I can only let you be the scapegoat. Use my power to cover the traces of the curse power. After thinking for a long time, Luoya apologetically apologized to the giant skeleton. Gulandayer readily agreed. A gust of red wind blew by, and everything in the room began to become undead. This should be enough, right? Luoya looked around and nodded as he muttered to himself. Just as he was about to thank Gulandayer, he suddenly felt something sweet in his throat. The next second, he directly coughed out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 208. In the steamy bathroom, Luoya Akate leaned against the edge of the pool, looking up at the gorgeous chandelier above his head in a daze. After a long time, the black-haired youth exhaled and looked down helplessly. Okay, my little brother hasn't rested yet. I'll continue to soak. Sigh. With a helpless sigh, Luoya scooped up a handful of cold water and washed his face, hoping to cool down his overheated brain, but the truth was that it didn't have much effect. Actually, Roha couldn't feel much of the outside world's temperature right now. The excessive amount of life energy was running all over his body, making him feel as uncomfortable as if he ate 200 kidneys and drank 100 pounds of ginseng wine. Looking at his pale pink body that was like a freshly cooked crab, Luoya couldn't help but recall the chaos an hour ago. An hour ago, In order to get rid of the side effects of his life exhaustion, Luo Ye and Ai Lizi performed a special treatment. According to Master Andrew's recommendation, they used the body fluid method, but strangely, during the treatment process, the body fluid method that should have been clearly controllable went wrong, causing a serious excess of life energy. Originally, Luo Ye wanted to collect Ai Lizi's tears, but because of her firm opposition, the two changed to a rather ambiguous method of feeding each other wine, but this method inexplicably overdosed. Until now, Luo Ye still didn't understand why a few mouthfuls of wine with a trace of saliva could make him like this. After a long time, he could only attribute it to Ai Lizi's life energy, and the Pamela wine having an unknown reaction that strengthened the effect. But just like how most people didn't care about the cause of the incident, when the door was blown open, Nua Ayer and Xia Luo didn't care about how Luo Ye's situation became like this. They only cared about one thing, and that was Ai Lizi riding on top of him. The two of them looked like they were in a delirious state. Although he inexplicably felt that the girls didn't want him to be too sober after seeing his appearance, and they didn't seem too happy when the servants gave him an ice pack. At that time, he didn't have time to think about why, because there were more troublesome things waiting for him. More than 10 minutes after the three girls started fighting, Dia and Bruce came together, followed by Andrew and a group of important figures. The two fathers looked at the door stuck in the roof, and then looked at the traces of the Gulen Dayer's broken roof above Luo Ye. They couldn't help but look at each other. Obviously, Luo Ye's intervention had an effect. The appearance of the Gulen Dayer had disrupted the situation, and the group of high-level extraordinaires couldn't quite understand what was going on. While everyone was confused, Luo Ye decisively took the initiative to take the blame. "Father, Uncle Bruce, after I recovered from my injuries, I had too much vitality, and I didn't control my curse power well, so I went berserk. Fortunately, Ai Lizi, Nua Ayer, and Xia Luo were there to stop me. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable." The black-haired young man said so with an apologetic expression, which stunned Dia and Bruce. The two fathers looked at each other, then looked at the three girls who had stiff expressions on their faces with a strange expression. They had almost guessed the truth without saying a word. All right, the child has really grown up. She even knows how to steal other people's men. Such thoughts surged in their minds, and the fathers sighed with emotion. Bruce looked at Luo Ye, who had an apologetic smile on his face, and immediately understood the black-haired young man's intention. Luo Ye was trying to find a way out for the relationship between the three parties. For this reason, he even destroyed the scene and took the blame himself. It had to be said that it was really rare for someone at his age to be so considerate. After understanding Luo Ye's painstaking efforts, Bruce naturally wouldn't pursue the matter and fully cooperated with him. "I see. This is really an unfortunate accident, but fortunately, it's more daunting than dangerous." With this sentence as the beginning, the president directly classified this incident as an accident. In the face of Luo Ye's self-blame, Bruce enthusiastically stepped forward, held his hand, and comforted him with a smile. What kind of person was Luo Ye? At least at this stage, he was a patient. He was a patient after all. No matter what happened to a patient, it wasn't his own subjective behavior, so he shouldn't be blamed. Wasn't it just a broken roof? How could this be called an accident? Bruce was indeed worthy of being the head of a business family. His speech was very cordial and enthusiastic. Whether it was Dia or Luo Ye, both of them felt very comfortable listening to it. For a moment, the atmosphere in the room became harmonious, and the group of strong people who came along with him also went along with the flow. After a show of mutual understanding and harmony, Luo Ye, who couldn't support his life energy after completing the mission, was sent to the bathroom to soak in a cold bath. After completing the mission and settling the matter, Luo Ye was slightly sober under physical therapy. Now it was time for Luo Ye to consider some things. "Gulen Dayer, are you there?" "I'm here." A dull and somewhat hoarse male voice echoed in his ears. The phantom of a huge skeleton formed an image with curse power as a pen. Luo Ye looked at the faint phantom in the air, and heaved a sigh of relief. He opened his mouth and asked the question that had been in his heart for a long time. "Previously, I had a dream. The black-haired young man soaked in cold water and told the huge skeleton about the situation of that night. Ghoulandaire listened to Luoya's narration without any fluctuation in his emotions. However, when Luoya said that he was watched by a pair of eyes, the light spots in the huge skeleton's eye sockets couldn't help but shrink. It's a little troublesome. When Ghoulandaire finished listening to Luoya's words and gave such an evaluation, the black-haired young man couldn't help but have a serious expression. Until now, he had been together with Ghoulandaire for several years, but this was the first time Luoya heard such words from his mouth. Generally speaking, when Luoya asked a question, he would give the word small, just like when he was a giant overlooking the world. These were all small questions, but this time it was troublesome. Is the owner of that pair of eyes very strong? I'm not sure. When you were dreaming, the passage was broken, and I couldn't sense anything. However, the ability you absorbed did come from a powerful monster. If this monster is only the servant of the Mother Goddess, then her strength is probably far beyond imagination. Ghoulandaire, have you not heard of the Mother Goddess in your time? Maybe I have heard of it, maybe I haven't. It's probably because my head is empty. In the long years, I have forgotten too many things. I can't remember a lot of things when I was alive. Ghoulandaire hesitated for a long time and said, "It seems that I have to find some people for you." Chapter 209. For a long time, whenever Luoya and the Ghoulandaire talked about the strength, source substance, the giant skeleton didn't seem to care. After all, in the eyes of the Ghoulandaire, who ruled the land in ancient times, anyone who didn't reach source rank 3 was just a small fry. It was a level that didn't need to be looked at. Of course, Luoya was an exception. Crown origin substance. This was without a doubt a very special origin substance. Although it had the basic functions of an origin substance, relying on the bloodline, it could unleash unimaginable power. Under extreme circumstances, the owner of this origin substance could rely on the strength of a contestant to defeat opponents several levels higher. Of course, it wasn't a good thing to defeat opponents who were stronger than him. The strength of a contractor would often cause excessive corrosion to the owner of the crown, which would lead to troublesome side effects. But it had to be said that no matter the level of the owner of the crown's source substance or its bloodline, it would be a major unstable factor. As long as one was willing to sacrifice himself, even the emperor would be dragged down. You didn't have so many troubles in the past. I could deal with those rats in the dark. But the situation might change in the future. Sometimes having more people is a powerful advantage. The Ghoulandaire rarely emphasized the theory of numbers to Luoya, which made the black-haired boy stunned. Giants were famous for their outstanding individual combat strength. They rarely fought in groups. He didn't expect that the Ghoulandaire would ask him to expand his combat strength. A person's energy is limited, no matter how strong they are. I understand this principle. But speaking of manpower, Akkad Hill should have a lot of people, right? Luoya thought as he recalled the number of soldiers that were twice the number of ordinary marquis families. The Akkad family might not be good at other things, but at least they were outstanding in terms of military strength. However, the Ghoulandaire shook his head at Luoya's words. It's not that kind of a sea of people. What I mean is to find some people who can fight. Fight. This description was very simple. It was very suitable for the Ghoulandaire's style. But the problem was, what did this big brother mean by fight? Luoya was very clear. Source rank 3? It's better if it's higher. This. The black-haired youth looked at the big skeleton with a forced expression. Naturally, the Akkad clan had level 3 source grade experts, but these people were Kadia's right-hand men. They had been on the front lines for many years and held important positions. Although Luoya was the only son of the Akkad clan, it was impossible for these people to follow behind him all the time. It would be a waste. Experts like Gulacy who stayed close to Xiaoluo were few and far between. Furthermore, the Sorofia family had always felt that Gulacy was overqualified. It was just that she was unwilling to do anything else. In the end, level 3 source grade experts were not cabbages that could be found anywhere. They were recruited by various countries over the years, and the supply could not meet the demand. The level 3 source grade experts of the 3 major origin substances had long been snatched away. The experts of the origin substances had their own families. Unless they were completely subdued by the Akkad clan, no one would give up their family to protect Luoya. According to the requirements of the Gulandair, Luoya found that only the experts of the pagans could be recruited. Of course, he was not the only one who found out. In fact, the kings of small countries with weak competitiveness had also found out long ago. However, very few of them were recruited. After all, considering the danger of these people, they were ticking time bombs of level 3 source grade. Normal people would not be able to handle it. Although others might not be able to handle it, Luoya might not be able to do so. This was because he had already grasped the highest control of 2 pathways. The Gulandair and Paitila, as the supreme existences of the ancient times, had reached the limit of their own origin substances. The pagans in this world who used their origin substances could be said to be under their control. Luoya was not clear about the Paitila's origin substance, but the Gulandair's Luoya was often used. So are there many people who still use the power, origin substance? Not too many. The giant's origin substances are not suitable for you. That was true. Looking at the giant's bodies, the power, origin substance was probably one of the cruder origin substances. There were probably not many suitable for the human race. Luoya thought so and sighed. He had to dispel the thought in his heart until the Gulandair continued. There are probably only 2 people who can be bribed. Is that so? That's 2. Big brother, what did you say? The black-haired young man sitting in the cold pool raised his head and stared at the Gulandair's skull for a while. The giant skeleton was silent for a while under his gaze and asked, Source level 3, do you need it? Yes. Call them. Call as many as you can. Luoya clenched his fist and gave an answer with excitement. The 2 source level 3 pagans led the pagans group. This was the highest organization among the pagans' largest mercenary group. With the stability of the Gulandair's control, they did not have to worry about falling into depravity. They were simply the best foreign aid. Thinking of this, Luoya was excited, but at the same time, he was a little worried. This deal was almost beneficial to Luoya, but what about these pagans who used the power, origin substance? Although the pagans generally did not have a good life in this world, they could still make a living in some small countries that valued strength more. With the strength of source level 3, it was possible to be a general. If Luoya wanted to buy them, the Akkad family could also offer a price, but would they be willing to come? For this question, the Gulandair gave his own answer. Although the giant skeleton didn't know whether these people were living well or not, as a source substance user, the Gulandair could not only have a bad influence on them, but it could also have a good effect. For example, he could bless these downstream units. Chapter 210. In the past few years, Luoya had been paying attention to the Favorability Exchange District. The reason was that this district often had good things that were beneficial to the management of the territory. As the acting lord, Luoya had been able to achieve rapid economic growth in the past few years because of the Favorability Exchange District. However, even though Luoya had bought a lot of things here, he had only bought things that he could understand. For example, he bought things like furnaces and wooden bricks. As for the mysterious items, Luoya had never touched them. This was because in the distant past, there was a psychological shadow in his heart called the Skeleton Funeral Group. It was best not to buy things recklessly. This was a lesson that Luoya had learned at that time. Because of this, Luoya was very cautious when shopping in the Favorability Exchange District. For example, when Luoya saw abstract terms like Glory Gathering Place, he would shrink back. Not only because he didn't know what they were used for, but also because they were expensive. That's right. In Luoya's long search, he had discovered a pattern. That was, these abstract terms were ridiculously expensive. They would easily cost millions of favorability points. Even though AI Lizzie could produce 18,000 favorability points per mu, it still couldn't withstand such a torment. Fortunately, Luoya's favorability points had risen like a rocket in the past few years. Every day, he would be able to obtain a large amount of favorability points by walking around the city twice. If the favorability points were really lacking, Luoya could hold a lord meeting. In name, it was to listen to the opinions of the citizens. However, in addition to listening to opinions and dealing with problems, Mr. Luoya's sickle didn't delay. From this point of view, even though AI Lizzie gave a lot of favorability points, Luoya was actually using a more efficient method. However, just like how the human body could temporarily not eat, Luoya also had its own ecology. Favorability points could be obtained in the future, but AI Lizzie couldn't be ignored. Under Luoya's guidance, the increase in favorability points wasn't as exaggerated as expected. However, even so, it was still more than 200,000 points. Of course, speaking of this, the plus 80,000 points that Xia Luo obtained in one go could be said to be a wave of wealth. Today, when the gold exchange district ran out of potions, Luoya unexpectedly found something in the favorability exchange district. Bell of Protection. The clear bell calms people's soul. The blessing of protection makes people enjoy peace. Price: 500,000 favorability points. Monthly half-price limited price. 50% off. Price: 250,000 favorability points. To be honest, when Luoya saw this item, his first reaction was a pleasant surprise. After all, in this special period, slowing down his progress was the last thing that Luoya wanted. The system refreshed once a month, and there might not be any potions next time. Luoya really couldn't afford to waste time. However, after a short moment of excitement, a question began to appear in his mind. Is this item okay? How useful is it? After thinking carefully for a long time, Luoya decided to make a double insurance. Although the Bell of Protection was expensive, it was currently on sale, so he could still afford it. For his own safety, Luoya was very willing to spend points. Moreover, this could also be used as an experiment by Luoya to introduce abstract items. Other than that, the other insurance was the ordinary level-up potion. Level-up potions had existed since ancient times. Now she also had them. Luoya was currently in the city with the most variety of materials in the continent. Naturally, he wanted to find a better one for himself. However, he had to admit that the level of potions in this era was terrible. No matter how good the potion was, its use would be limited. Luoya still didn't know whether 1 + 1 was greater than or equal to 2. But this was already his best plan at this stage. After planning everything, Luoya came out of the bath and went ashore. He reported his needs through the servants. Of course, Luoya said that he was going to buy it. The Akot family was now considered a wealthy aristocrat, so a level-up potion wouldn't be free. After the riot was classified as an accident, both Xia Luo and AI Lizzie were taken away by their fathers. Although Ka Dia and Brosnan had to maintain a good atmosphere in public, it didn't mean that the two girls' mistakes were forgotten. Nuwa Iyer didn't have any parents, so she escaped the disaster. However, after this incident, she obediently went back home. At least for today, Luoya's side was peaceful. After Luoya took the initiative to take the blame, Brosnan had a more comprehensive understanding of his daughter's fiancé. Perhaps because of this, when the sound of a carriage sounded in the evening, the servants came with an exquisite box. They didn't mention the price at all until Luoya asked about the exquisite carved glass vase. Young Master Luoya, you are a distinguished guest of the Sorofia family. During your stay in the 100 Birds Hall, we will take care of all your needs. This is our honor, so please don't mind. After saying so, the servant smiled and left, making Luoya smile helplessly. After thinking for a while, the black-haired young man nodded slightly. As the saying goes, it would be impolite to refuse. Since the Sorofia family was so enthusiastic, it would be strange for him to refuse. After thinking it through, Luoya looked at the crystal-clear liquid in the container carefully. Should I say that expensive things always have a better appearance? The potion given by the Sorofia family was obviously a high-grade product. It was orange in color and somewhat resembled wine. The smell wasn't pungent, and compared to the Biollo series, it was much better in appearance. However, the appearance of a potion wasn't the most important thing. Luoya thought so and shook his head. He opened the system and looked at the bell of protection. After hesitating for a while, he finally clenched his teeth and chose to buy it. After a flash of light, the item that cost 250,000 points of Luoya finally appeared. However, what the black-haired young man didn't expect was that this item that sounded very big and cost a lot of points was actually not that big. In fact, it was a little small. It was a small black pocket-sized bell. He didn't know what material it was made of, but its shape was very traditional, and even a little ordinary. It was only as tall as Luoya's calf, and could be held with one hand. If one didn't pay attention, one would think that it was a big bell. However, the patterns on it were very complicated. Looking at the simple and mysterious little bell, Luoya felt a little more at ease. He placed the two items on the table and looked out of the window. Now that the life exhaustion and the ice status had been removed, only the undying status was still affecting him. Then there was only one thing left to do. Let's have dinner together after a long time, with Miss Angel. Chapter 211. Tonight, Rosetta City was calm and peaceful. The refreshing breeze brought the unique warmth of spring, and on the open-air terrace of the pavilion of Celta, the warm breeze was even more obvious due to the height. Luoya sat on a chair and looked through the fence at the bustling night view outside the pavilion. He couldn't help but feel a little dazed. After a long time, he sighed with deep emotion. Rosetta is really a bustling place. In Shia, generally speaking, there was no concept of a city that never sleeps. After all, although the lighting tools in this era were not expensive, it was still a kind of cost, and the lighting conditions were generally poor. The larger the city, the more it needed to light up, and the more difficult it was to do so. For a capital city like Akate City, it would be completely dark a few hours after nightfall. The people had already adapted to the life of working at sunrise and resting at sunset. Going to bed early and waking up early wasn't just a saying, it was a habit cultivated by the living environment. However, in Rosetta, this situation had changed. As one of the most bustling cities in the human world, Rosetta was different at night. The streets and alleys were filled with various special minerals mined by the Sorofia family from the southern mountains. As long as they were injected with curse power, they could replace the traditional light source. Therefore, there were many colorful lights in Rosetta at night, and there was even a large-scale night market with people coming and going. Such a scene seemed to bring Luoya back to his previous life. Well, this is indeed a bustling city, but bustle also means noise to a certain extent. Compared to that, I prefer the silence of the St. Dew prayer meeting at night. I see. Everyone has different preferences. The St. Dew is the seat of the Holy See, so it should be more solemn. Then where do you like better? I like both. When I'm bored, I can find interesting novelties in Rosetta. When I'm annoyed, the prayer meeting in St. Dew Lorraine is very good. Of course I like Akate City the most. After all, it's my home. Sorry, I don't choose the golden nest or the silver nest. I choose my own dog nest. Facing Nua Ayer's deep question, Luoya gave his answer decisively. Nua Ayer was not happy or sad. She turned her head and looked at the scenery in the distance silently. Looking at the princess like this, Luoya could not help but gradually frown. What's going on? The black-haired boy looked at the girl and fell into deep thought. Luoya came to see the Nua Ayer an hour ago to remove the undead status. Although the undead status was rare, it wasn't difficult to remove. Luoya's medical treatment could completely remove it. However, because Luoya was in a hurry to level up as soon as possible and hadn't seen the Nua Ayer for a long time, he simply came to see the Nua Ayer. Heathcliff's angelic bloodline had many magical uses. One of them was that it was very effective in restraining the undead status. With the help of Nua Ayer, Luoya's undead status could be said to be cured. However, during the treatment process, Luoya discovered one thing. Nua Ayer's mood was low, or rather, she seemed to have something on her mind. Originally, Luoya thought that it was because the three girls had made a mistake, and the other two were taken back to educate and criticize. Nua Ayer escaped the disaster, so Luoya seemed a little uncomfortable. But now, it seemed that this princess might really be troubled. Nua Ayer, do you have anything to say? After thinking for a while, Luoya decided to ask directly. After hearing the boy's question, Her Royal Highness also turned her head. Her lips opened and closed several times as if she wanted to say something, but she hesitated. After pondering for a long time, she only let out a sigh. Nua Ire Heathcliff was indeed troubled. Since the banquet, Xia Luo's doubts had become a thorn in her heart, and every time she thought about it, she would be annoyed. On the other hand, Nua Ire was busy because of her identity as the successor. For a long time, Luoya and Nua Ire spent less time together. It felt like a long-distance relationship. A weekly letter and a short phone call were all the communication between Nua Ire and Luoya. In the past, the girl thought that this was enough to protect her relationship, but the huge impact of Xia Luo's appearance completely awakened Nua Ire's crisis awareness. AI Lizzie was stimulated by Xia Luo's behavior, and so was Nua Ire. However, unlike AI Lizzie, Nua Ire was mentally unbalanced and worried about gains and losses. Luoya, I have a question that I've always wanted to ask you. Are you happy being with me? After hesitating for a long time, the blonde girl mustered up the courage to ask this question. Luoya's eyes widened slightly when she heard this. After a moment of daze, confusion appeared in her eyes. Although it was a bit exaggerated to say that, in the current human world, Nua Ire could be said to be the most respected person in the entire younger generation. Whether it was the theocracy of Saint Maester or the Vatican, she had a huge influence that covered the entire Shia. Nua Ire was the princess of the theocracy. Even Xia Luo's father, Bruce, had to treat her with respect. If such a girl made a vow to protect you as her responsibility, would there be anyone in the world who would not be happy? Nua Ire, what's wrong with you? Why do you ask? Because I'm wondering if I've been forcing you to cooperate with my hobby all this time. Did this behavior arouse your disgust? Ah? Luoya was speechless when she heard the girl's words. After a moment of hesitation, she let out a big sigh. I say, what are you thinking about? Didn't I already know what kind of person you are from the beginning? If I really hated you, I wouldn't even get close to you. And in the end, when did I say that I wanted you to change? The black-haired boy rubbed his brows speechlessly. He looked at the girl opposite him, who widened her eyes in surprise and said faintly, Chapter 212. While Luoya was enduring Nua Ire's stormy attacks on the balcony at the top of the pavilion of Celta, Xia Luo Sorofia was facing a serious challenge on another battlefield. This evening, a banquet was also held at the Carlos Hall in the second manor of Sorofia. However, unlike the banquet where Nua Ire and Luoya supported each other, Sorofia's banquet was quite serious and unusually polite. There was only one person invited to this banquet, and that was the head of the Akot family, Kadia Akot. As for the invitee, it was Bruce Sorofia. However, this was not a secret meeting between the two of them, but a third person. At the dining table, the reddish-brown-haired girl was eating her meal with proper etiquette. Beside her ears were the occasional chatter of the two family heads. From yesterday's exchange of pleasantries until now, Bruce and Kadia were already quite familiar with each other, which was why their conversations were much more relaxed. Marquis Kadia, the weather on your side this year seems to be better than in the past. Indeed, this winter is not as cold as in the past, but there is still a lot of snow. The weather on Rose's side is still stable. I think this year's grain production should be good. Haha, indeed. Our Ministry of Agriculture also expects this year to be a bumper harvest. Bruce took a sip of wine and said so with a smile. He looked to the side and glanced at Xia Luo, who was obviously more nervous than usual. He sighed in his heart. Now that the banquet had reached the dessert segment, the three people at the dining table were basically chatting. After a long period of foreshadowing and getting closer to each other, Bruce began to work. Marquis Kadia, I'm very sorry about this incident. Xia Luo was too concerned about Luoya, so she did this on impulse. Haha, Mr. Bruce, you don't have to apologize. Our family's AI Lizzie has always been infatuated with Luoya, which led to this ridiculous incident. We have to apologize to the host, Rose. Marquis Kadia is too polite. This time, the successful treatment of Luoya back to Rose is all thanks to Miss AI Lizzie. Luoya and Xia Luot found many ancient technologies of the Kingdom of Sophia in the ruins together. They are our benefactors. His recovery is our most sincere wish. The two fathers laughed back and forth, which made Xia Luot's face even paler. Marquis Ka Dia's undisguised support for his adopted daughter could be said to be clear and easy to understand. Most importantly, Xia Luot didn't hear anything about the marriage contract from him. The marriage contract between the two families was now in name only due to Nua Ayer's intervention. After this incident, although Xia Luot seemed to still have a name, in fact, it was a loss because without the marriage contract, the other two had the approval of Luoya's father, Ka Dia. They were far superior to her. There was no doubt that this was an unfair competition. Although Luoya was a person who didn't pay much attention to these things, the boy paid more attention to the most direct feelings when getting along with people. However, falling in love and getting married were two different things. Once it came to marriage, Ka Dia was a mountain that couldn't be bypassed. After understanding this, Xia Luot naturally didn't dare to act rashly. She decisively looked for Bruce, hoping to solve this matter. But so far, Ka Dia's attitude still hadn't changed. This time, Luoya helped our Sorofia family find important historical relics, many of which we have searched for hundreds of years without success. I think this means that the friendship between our two families has reached a fateful moment, and we can go further. Ha ha ha, Mr. Bruce, you flatter me. Luoya was just following the guidance of the bloodline. It was unexpected that she could help find Sorofia family's target curse vessel. As for the further cooperation between our two families, I agree. The economic development of Akat Hill is inseparable from Luoya's assistance and support. Under Ka Dia's modest and polite change of topic, Bruce smiled on the surface, but he was helpless in his heart. On the other side, Xia Luot was completely at a loss. To this day, Xia Luot didn't understand why Ka Dia was so opposed to her contacting Luoya. As the eldest daughter of the Sorofia family, Xia Luot ruled a region with her extraordinary talent when she was 9 years old. Even the leaders of the Rosetta Chamber of Commerce respected her from the bottom of their hearts. Whether it was talent, status, or ability, Xia Luot was almost impeccable. However, these seemed to be ineffective in front of Ka Dia. Where am I lacking? Why is Luoya's father so annoying? Is it because I forcibly brought back Luoya? No, that's not right. Ka Dia's interference was already there before that. Then why? The girl clenched her fists and bit her lips. There were countless questions in her heart. However, in the face of her lover's parents, Xia Luot didn't dare to question them at all. She was so nervous that she didn't even dare to speak. That's right, Charlotte, who had never had stage fright before, was now scared. She felt that this was the first time she had fought in a situation where she didn't have any information to support her, and didn't understand her opponent's needs. If she were to lose, she might lose the love that she treasured. This price was too great, so great that she couldn't bear it. Well, it's getting late, Mr. Bruce, Miss Xia Luot, it's almost time for me to leave. After a flawless chat, Ka Dia politely said goodbye with a smile on her face. Bruce glanced sideways at Xia Luot, who hadn't spoken much all this time, and stiffened when she heard Ka Dia say goodbye. He knew that tonight's banquet was probably in vain. What a pity. This should have been the best opportunity, but Ka Dia's attitude was very firm. His daughter's marriage was probably. The brown-haired middle-aged man thought about the Akat family's attitude all this time and felt pessimistic. Xia Luot's abnormal performance tonight made him very anxious. There was no doubt that his daughter had fallen deeply in love, and there was a problem with her mentality. It was precisely because of this that she appeared to be timid in front of Luoya's father. However, this actually made her look bad. Showing her true self and showing her outstanding side to conquer the other party's parents was what Xia Luot should do now. Unfortunately, it was already too late. Bruce stood up and sent Ka Dia off. On the other side, the brown-haired girl also stood up stiffly. Xia Luot felt that her brain was numb. She also knew that today's private meeting was the best opportunity, but her performance was far worse than she imagined. Looking at Ka Dia's back as she stood up and left, Xia Luot suddenly had a feeling. If she let her leave like this, Ka Dia's impression of her would be completely formed. She had to do something, but what could she do now? Her mind was blank, and her breathing was difficult to control. The high tension made it difficult for Xiao Luo to move. The girl lowered her head and desperately thought of a solution. Suddenly, she recalled the moment when she pulled the trigger and shot Luoya's body under the cover of the terrifying black monster. At that moment, Xiao Luo's love transcended life and death, and defeated the most fundamental fear of mankind. Compared to that, what was the current situation? Even a monster like Mr. Darkness couldn't cut off her love for Luoya. Was she going to ruin her feelings in this peaceful time? Chapter 213. Xiao Luo had an epiphany the moment she rushed out. What could move Kadia? Even someone as intelligent as her had never thought of this question. For Kadia, a powerful minister of the theocracy, one of the 5 great nobles, and the lord of a large number of territories, there was almost nothing in the world that could change his mind. But if he were to disregard all this, as a father of a single-parent family and a man who had been widowed for many years, there was one thing that could move him. That was true love. Kadia was a rare person among the nobles who cared about feelings, especially when it came to the relationship between a man and a woman. Kadia was very different from other nobles who traded marriages. Because of this, he did not think highly of Xiao Luo's marriage from the very beginning. No matter how it was covered up, this was still a transaction between 2 families. But what if Xiao Luo could show true love that far surpassed this transaction, and that Kadia appreciated? The girl was unsure of the answer to this question, but she was willing to take a gamble and use her truest feelings as a weapon to attack. I love Luoya. Please don't stand in the way of our love. This is the only request I have in my life. The moment the girl bent down, both Bruce and Kadia in the room were stunned. The sound of the clock ticking echoed in the luxuriously decorated room like never before. Kadia frowned after a few seconds. Miss Xiao Luo, I think you might have some misunderstandings. Please get up. Uncle Kadia, you might know that when I first met Luoya, I was misunderstood and induced. Before the Lord Marquis could finish his excuses, the reddish-brown-haired girl retorted with this almost concrete inducement incident. Kadia's expression changed the moment she said that, and began to turn a little ugly. Mentioning the induced incident in front of his face would undoubtedly make him feel like he was holding her accountable. As the mastermind behind this incident, Kadia naturally felt somewhat embarrassed after hearing this. Xiao Luo was aware of this situation, but her next words stunned the Marquis. Uncle, I have no opinion about that incident because it wasn't just the induced people. At that time, I also thought that my marriage with Luoya was inappropriate. As she said this, Xiao Luo raised her head and looked straight into Kadia's eyes with her emerald eyes. 100-year marriage contract. Although it sounds historical, marriage itself shouldn't be decided by the past. Marriage represents the future. It's the beginning of one person choosing another person to support each other and fight against all external factors in the future. It's beautiful and sacred, but it shouldn't be planned. That is indeed the case. Listening to Xiao Luo's understanding of marriage, Kadia, who was free to love, could not help but nod with a lot of emotions. Xiao Luo looked at the man who was willing to listen to her, and felt emotional. She recalled the situation with Luoya at that time and continued. So when I met Luoya, there were many misunderstandings between us. I'm afraid you didn't know that our relationship started from mutual disgust, but just like my divination, love is as unpredictable as fate. When we were exploring the legacy of the Sophia dynasty, our lives were in danger several times. In that special environment, we fought together and did our best to save each other. Luoya used his own body to block an attack for me, and I once gave him the hope of survival. Our love was born in such an environment. Its birth was accompanied by the most difficult test, but in the end our love won. Uncle Kadia, after going through all this, do you think I can still let go? Xiao Luo asked in a choked voice. The Marquis, who heard Xiao Luo and Luoya's story for the first time, could not help but widen his eyes slightly. For a moment he did not know how to answer. Seeing this, the girl did not press him and only silently lowered her head again. Uncle, I know I came late. I'm not as good as Princess Nuaire to provide him with protection. I don't have the deep accumulation of experience with him like Miss A.I. Lizzie, but I will never lose to anyone when it comes to love Luoya. Please give me a chance, I beg of you, I beg of you. The reddish-brown-haired girl's face was covered in tears halfway through her words. Her tears fell drop by drop onto the carpet. Seeing this, Kadia was finally completely speechless. Xia Luo's true feelings undoubtedly brought a huge impact to Kadia. At the same time, it also made him feel nostalgic. In a trance, the Marquis seemed to see the figure of his deceased wife, as well as the nobles who opposed his marriage when he was young. But what he did not expect was that many years later, he would actually stand in the same position. An unprecedented emotion rose in the man's heart. He looked at the girl in front of him, and his gaze gradually softened. "Sigh, I'm old." The black-haired middle-aged man sighed, and said to the crying Xia Luo, "Child, get up. I agree to your request." "Uncle Kadia? You mean, in the future I won't object to the matter between you and Luoya, but at the same time, I won't agree to it," Kadia said and sighed silently. Nuwa Iyer and A.I. Lizzie were first, and Kadia had already expressed his support, so this was the biggest concession he could make. "I can't control Luoya's thoughts. Everything depends on you." Yes, I understand. Thank you." Hearing Kadia's acknowledgement to a certain extent, Xia Luo's heart relaxed, and her tears flowed even more uncontrollably. Chapter 214. The system gave Roha a clock. It seems like it can be said that. Tasting the sweet potion in his mouth, Roha sighed and touched the bell on the table. He couldn't help but have a question in his mind. How do I use this thing? Generally speaking, the bell needed to be struck, but when Luoya thought about striking the bell while breaking through, he had an inexplicable feeling of a senior monk passing away. Luoya thought about it and didn't ask the maids for help. Instead, he tried using the spell. No matter what, it was still a high-level item. Luoya felt that it shouldn't be activated by human power, and it turned out that he was right. The moment the curse power poured into the small black bell, the simple black bell seemed to have come back to life from the dust of ancient times. The bell vibrated and buzzed, and at the same time, many incomprehensible runes began to squirm, and the next moment, they suddenly exploded. After a light ring, the runes spread out and shot into the air. The mysterious runes formed a unique domain that enveloped Luoya. In a trance, the young man seemed to hear the sweet sound of a bell from afar, but when he looked carefully, the black bell on the table didn't move at all. Is this something like a barrier? Luoya looked around and nodded. At the same time, a warm feeling spread through Luoya's body. A faint sleepiness began to spread in the young man's mind. Listening to the sound of the bell, Luoya calmed down and silently activated the spell. The room fell into silence. The next morning, a carriage arrived at the wide courtyard of the 100 Birds Hall. It was a luxurious black carriage with the symbol of the Eye of Candlelight. The guard who came to inquire saw the family emblem, and immediately recognized that it was the private carriage of the Alcott family. He greeted them with a smile and let them in. Everyone in the 100 Birds Hall, from the butler to the ordinary guards, knew about the Alcott family's situation. To describe the current situation, the 100 Birds Hall could be said to be hiding a mistress in a golden house. Even though this Jiao was a man, and after understanding the thoughts of the master of the mansion, their young mistress, the servants in the mansion naturally felt friendlier towards the Alcott family, who were allies to begin with. Stepping down from the carriage, Count Kadia nodded at the servants who greeted him with a smile, and was led to the guest room. It had been a few days since he came to Rose. The festive atmosphere had subsided. He had also met privately several times. Now that many things were done, it was time for Kadia to take a good look at his son who was kidnapped by a beautiful girl. However, to his surprise, Luoya was very different from the last time. He was full of energy. The Marquis, who carefully observed for a moment, couldn't help but be surprised. Did you break through? Count Kadia's powerful perception caught the spell leaking from Luoya's body. He couldn't help but ask in surprise. Under the inquiry of his father, Luoya also gave an honest answer. The middle-aged man who learned that his son had reached source level 4 couldn't help but be overjoyed. I didn't expect it, I really didn't expect it. When you were young, your extraordinary talent was very poor. I thought it would be difficult for you to achieve anything in this life. Who would have thought that you would awaken the family bloodline? Kadia looked at Luoya and sighed. Reaching source level 4 was not a small matter. It must be known that in the current Xia, there were at least hundreds of noble children. Although most of them were only in name, the average strength of this group was indeed higher than ordinary people, and even higher than the lower nobles. Luoya was 13 years old this year, and would be an adult next year. At that time, studying in the country of scholars would be an essential step. It was a gathering of the young elites of the human world that was far from comparable to so far. There he would meet a large number of people of the same age. At this age of youth, strength was often the most important thing. Being able to reach source level 5 was basically the first-class standard of this age. It was an elite who had the right to speak and was envied. But even so, it was far from unique. The world was very big. The consequences of looking down on the heroes of the world was most likely to be slapped in the face. However, reaching source level 4 was different. Source level 4 was a threshold. It was the threshold that attracted the most attention of the peerless geniuses. Whether it was Nua Iyer, Ai Lizi, or Xia Luot, they were all at the top of the pyramid of this era. Their talents and abnormalities could be seen at a glance. However, Luoya was not. In Kadia's eyes, even if Luoya awakened his bloodline, it would be extremely difficult for him to reach source level 4. However, this inherent concept was now broken by Luoya's own efforts. This made Kadia happy and gratified. On the other side, the black-haired boy did not have such a feeling. In fact, Luoya felt that his current condition was not good. After experimenting with Xia's highest level promotion assistance potion, Luoya deeply understood that the Burrow series was really top-notch. Although it did not look gorgeous and often had strange side effects, in terms of effects, the Burrow series could be said to be very good. Whether it was the golden partner or the fake wine, Luoya would not be able to get up after drinking it. However, after he recovered, he would immediately stabilize his breakthrough. However, this time, Xia's promotion assistance potion was not the same. The assistance potion was really an assistance potion. Unlike the Burrow series, Luoya had to control and guide the curse power to a certain extent by himself. He struggled for an entire night before he succeeded, and this was still within the barrier of the Bell of Protection. It had to be said that this time, Luoya's caution had paid off. The Bell of Protection, that he gritted his teeth and bought, was very useful. In the high-pressure environment of the promotion period, encountering setbacks was very likely to double the pressure and make one go astray. However, within the barrier of the bell's sound, all these worries and tensions seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Something similar to a blessing maintained the peace of his heart. It could be said that half of the reason why Luoya took an entire night to succeed was because of the Bell of Protection. After experiencing it once, Luoya also understood that the effect was the same within the barrier. In other words, several people could use the Bell of Protection at the same time. Luoya was very satisfied with this. After all, who did not like to exercise with more people? The boy rejoiced. After seeing Luoya's strength, Kadia also felt a lot more at ease. He waved at Luoya and told him the purpose of his visit this time. Luoya, I want to talk to you about your marriage. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.